Chapter 1033. Looking at the back door on the side, Ming sighed heavily again. He walked out of the back door and looked around, but he didn't see Lily. He shouted, "You Lily?" No one answered. Instead, many French people looked in Ming's direction. Ming breathed, looked up, and saw you Lily walking near the amusement park in front of him. This woman. How old is she to play hide-and-seek with me? Ming walked toward the amusement park with his long legs. You Lily seemed to notice that he was chasing her, so she ran again. When Ming saw that, he took big strides and chased after you Lily. When he caught up with her, he found that she had disappeared again. I'm starving. Ming hadn't eaten all day, and now he ran such a long circle. He was hungry, sleepy, and cold. Ming decided not to run anymore and stopped. He picked up his mobile phone and called you Lily. As expected, he couldn't get through. He called Luo Zhan and said, "Keep an eye on the registration of you Lily's passport. If there is any movement, inform me." After hanging up the phone, Ming returned to the hotel where you Lily was just now. He ordered something to eat first and sat in the lobby, waiting for you Lily to come back. It was impossible for you Lily not to return to the hotel. The more she avoided him, the more he had to stay there. However, before you Lily could get there, an unexpected but unsurprising person came to visit. When Shunjilia saw Ming, he sneered and put his luggage at hand. He was not in a hurry to get a room, but he called you Lily in front of Ming. When you Lily received the call from Shunjilia, she was still hiding in the coffee shop outside. When she saw it was Shunjilia, she immediately picked up. "Hello?" Shunjilia looked at Ming and said to you Lily on the phone, "Which room are you staying in?" Hearing that, you Lily was shocked and suddenly asked, "Are you in Paris?" "Yes, I also arrived at the hotel where you are staying." "How do you know?" "I didn't tell you." You Lily exclaimed and couldn't believe it. "Yi Qianqian told me. I'm already at the hotel. Come and pick me up." Shunjilia's words made Ming's eyes narrow dangerously, and he looked at him unkindly. Compared to Ming, Shunjilia appeared calm and unperturbed. He looked at Ming and sneered. "Why are you here? Are you chasing after my girlfriend?"
Shunjilia.
"I didn't expect you to run away from the marriage. You're a bastard, a coward." Shunjilia looked at him coldly. "If you can't give my sister a future, why did you provoke her? Now you're pestering Lily. Are you crazy? It's none of your business, but I advise you to break up with you Lily as soon as possible. You won't have a happy ending. It has nothing to do with you. You Lily is my girlfriend now. Who do you think you are?" Shunjilia smirked. "I'm sharing a room with my girlfriend. It's not up to you to decide what happens." Ming's face suddenly darkened. He gritted his teeth and took a step forward. He raised his hand and punched Shunjilia's cheek. Shunjilia didn't expect him to suddenly attack. He was not prepared for it, and the punch hit his face. Shunjilia took 2 steps back before he stopped. Chapter 1034. Just as Shunjilia was about to retaliate, he heard you Lily's footsteps behind him. You Lily's footsteps were easy to recognize. Shunjilia paused and looked at Ming with a sneer. "You're already married, yet you're still trying to be a third party. Don't you feel ashamed? Do you really think Lily still likes you? I'm the only one in her heart now. As for you, just take good care of my sister, brother-in-law." They were all married people. Brother-in-law. Sure enough, Ming was already married, right? She knew that if Ming wanted to break off the engagement, he would have done so long ago. Why wait until now? You Lily's footsteps were getting slower and slower. When she heard this, she stopped, panting slightly. Ming narrowed his eyes, and a dangerous aura emanated from him. "Shunjilia, you know." Shunjilia acted as if he hadn't heard Ming's words. He turned around and saw you Lily in a red down jacket. She wore a lot of clothes and looked like a dumpling. Shunjilia's face hurt, but when he saw her expression, he couldn't help but curl his lips and say affectionately, "You're back. Where did you go?" You Lily didn't answer. Instead, her gaze fell on his face. A bruise suddenly appeared on Shunjilia's originally fair and clean face. It looked swollen. Needless to say, it must have been Ming. You Lily turned her head and glared at Ming. she scolded. Oh Ming, are you crazy? If you want to go crazy, you can just go crazy in China. Why are you going crazy in Paris? Oh Ming's expression became even more unsightly. That punch didn't make him feel any better. Instead, it made him feel even more aggrieved. Lily's eyes were filled with guilt. She reached out to touch Shenjilia's face and asked softly, Are you okay? Shenjilia shook his head and said, I'm fine. It doesn't hurt. How can it not hurt? It's green. The guilt in Lily's eyes deepened, and she glared at Oming angrily. Barbaric. When Oming heard that, he laughed in anger and said, Lily, what kind of attitude is that? You actually sided with this guy and scolded me? Are you blind or deaf? Can't you see my attitude? Lily wasn't polite at all. She immediately said in an angry voice, Get lost, okay? I don't want to see you at all. I've never seen anyone as annoying as you. Forget it, Lily. Shenjilia reached out and gently held Lily in his arms. We don't own the hotel, and Paris doesn't belong to us. He can go wherever he wants to go. Let's go back and put my things in the room first. Lily was stunned. From his tone, it seemed that he wanted to stay in the same room as her. That's not a good idea, right? When Shenjilia saw her like this, he rubbed his bruised cheek and said, Can you help me with a hot compress? It really hurts a little. Lily looked at the wound and sighed in her heart. She nodded and led Shenjilia to the elevator. Oming's face darkened. He sneered and said, Now, are you bringing all the men into your room? You just had sex with me 3 days ago. What did you say before that? Why don't you tell your boyfriend? Lily's back stiffened. Facing Shenjilia's gaze in front of her, she felt as if she had been stripped naked. It was indescribably embarrassing. Chapter 1035. Lily turned her head and frowned. She looked at Oming and shouted, Shut up. Oming didn't seem to notice her anger. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly, and he stepped closer to her. He said word by word, So one is an emotional dependence, and the other is a physical release, right? Shut up. Lily was so angry that her eyes were red. She reached out and was about to hit Oming. However, Oming grabbed her arm and pulled her back. In a low voice, he said, I didn't know that the woman I slept with for so many years was so greedy and scheming. Young Master Shin, do you want this kind of woman? Lily felt very embarrassed. Her eyes were red. She tried to withdraw her arm, but it was held tightly. When Shenjilia heard this, he laughed out loud. There was no displeasure on his face. He held Lily's hand and looked at Oming at the same time. She is the woman I chose. No matter what, I can't let others take advantage of her. Brother-in-law, please let go. We have to go back to the room to sleep. Oming didn't expect Shenjilia's attitude. He laughed and said, Really? But after she tried me, I'm afraid she won't be used to being with you.
You don't have to worry about that.
We will solve our own problems, and she and I are very harmonious. At least, when she faces me, she will not be frigid. Because they had never done it at all. He didn't know whether Lily would be frigid. When Oming heard that, his face darkened. In an instant, the two of them confronted each other. There seemed to be an invisible war going on between Oming and Shenjilia. They were fighting each other subconsciously, and they were equally matched. Let go. Lily's eyes were redder, and her voice was choked with a little unhappiness. I know how I am. Since you want to compare, you can compare. I won't play with you. Every word that came out of their mouths seemed to be deliberately humiliating Lily. This was especially true for Oming. Every sentence he spoke was ruthlessly slashed down, bringing with it traces of blood. Every slash was fatal. Seeing her like this, Oming's heart trembled, and he quickly let go of her. Shenjilia naturally took her hand and said, Goodbye. With that, he held Lily's hand in his left hand and carried his suitcase in his right as he walked toward the elevator. Lily took out the key card, swiped the elevator, and turned to look at Oming before stepping into the elevator. Oming looked at their backs, and something in his heart suddenly fell, causing him to sit down on the sofa. They were really together. Originally, Oming was still holding on to his wishful thinking, but now that he had seen it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears, all the wishful thinking had been crushed by reality, leaving no trace. Eulili had originally planned to live alone, so she had only booked a standard room. Seeing Shunjilia pull his suitcase in, Eulili's heart was pounding. She looked at Shunjilia and asked, "Do you really intend to stay here?" When Shunjilia heard that, he turned his head to look at her. With a bright smile, he asked, "Can't I?" "No, of course not." Eulili looked at Shunjilia and frowned. She looked at him and said, "Shunjilia, you know, I don't like you." Chapter 1036. Hearing this, Eulili paused for a moment. Then, she bit the bullet and nodded. "It doesn't matter." Shunjilia walked toward her and quietly approached her. "I don't mind." Eulili resisted and took a step back, avoiding his eyes, and said, "You'd better get another room to sleep. I don't want to sleep with you." This should be direct enough, right? But is it too direct? Eulili didn't dare to look up at him and waited for his answer. However, Shunjilia didn't speak for a long time. On the contrary, Eulili couldn't help but look up at him. Shunjilia's expression was calm, and he looked no different from his usual self. However, at that moment, his big, round, and clear eyes seemed to have a deeper meaning. Seeing Eulili look up at him, he stepped closer and said, "You were with him 3 days ago?" Eulili looked up at him and didn't speak. "That day was the day before my sister's wedding, right?" Eulili looked away and didn't answer him directly. "Have you seen the news recently?" Shunjilia looked at her with a cold look.
No.
She didn't dare to look at him. She was afraid that if she saw him too happy, she wouldn't be able to control herself. Shunjilia slightly raised his eyebrows and said, "The wedding was very successful, but he came to Paris to find you during the honeymoon. If you had a little self-awareness, you would have driven him back and let him stay with Enchanting. In this way, he wouldn't pester you." Eulili bowed her head and said, "Well, I know. You go and get a room. I want to sleep." Shunjilia looked at her and chuckled. "I was just a shield, and then I was useless?" Shunjilia didn't want to leave at all. He still stood in front of Eulili, lifted her face, and said, "I'm your boyfriend, and I'm sleeping in the same room with you. Why can't I?" "Shunjilia, you knew I would be like this. Why did you come to me? Then why did you sleep with him a few days ago when you knew he was married?" Eulili was rendered speechless by his question. After a long pause, he finally said, "I didn't know that he would chase after me. After I came to Paris, I planned to find a small mountain village to settle down in, and then I wouldn't go back." Who knew that Oming would find her? She had no idea that Shunjilia would come knocking on her door. Their appearance had disrupted all her plans. Shunjilia stared at her and said word by word, "Eulili, you still can't let him go, can you?" Eulili was silent. Shunjilia knew that it wasn't something that could be easily let go of. However, he still felt uncomfortable. Shunjilia lifted her face and asked, "Why can he but I can't?" "Shunjilia, thank you for treating me so well. So, you're giving me the good guy card? You're going to tell me to scram after you're done, right?" Shunjilia looked at her and suddenly sighed. "Eulili, isn't it a little unfair for you to do this?" Eulili slapped his hand away and did not speak, but her eyes were full of apology. Shunjilia stared at her for a long time and said, "Forget it. I'll move out. You have a good rest." Eulili's face had a hint of relief. Looking at Shunjilia turning around, she felt lucky. However, Shunjilia suddenly turned around, stepped forward, held Eulili's face in his hands, bowed his head, and kissed her. Chapter 1037. She stared at Shunjilia in front of her in disbelief. Seeing that his eyes were also wide open, Eulili couldn't help but resist. Shunjilia was slightly surprised and raised his eyebrows. The unexpected softness on his lips, with a faint aroma of coffee, was like smooth and tender jelly. Eulili tasted better than he had imagined. But before he had time to taste it carefully, Eulili pushed him away with both hands. In front of him, Eulili was so angry that she was short of breath. Shunjilia saw this and smiled brightly. interest. After that, he opened the door and walked out. The whole room was so quiet. Eulili saw that Shinjilia's luggage seemed to be still in the room. It was just a light kiss, but it made Eulili feel uncomfortable for no reason. She didn't know why she felt uncomfortable. She pursed her lips and turned into the bathroom. Oming had also kissed her, but the feeling was completely different. After turning on the water, Eulili wiped her mouth with the cold water. She rinsed several mouthfuls of water in a row, but the discomfort did not ease. Instead, it became worse. In the mirror, Eulili's face was covered with water. The water was a little cold. Eulili lowered her eyes, dried her face, and went out. She opened the door and saw Shunjilia coming from afar. After pushing his suitcase out, she went in and locked the door. Seeing this, Shunjilia chuckled and pulled his suitcase into the room opposite Eulili's. It was a quiet night. Eulili slept for 3 or 4 hours, and she couldn't fall back asleep. Her mind was full of thoughts. She got up and painted all night. Eulili didn't lie down until the sky outside was bright. While she was in a daze, the doorbell kept ringing. She looked through the peephole and saw it was Shunjilia. Eulili didn't open the door and said, "I am sleeping. Don't wake me. I will continue to sleep." "Well, then remember to get up for breakfast." Eulili ignored him, turned around, and continued to sleep. Outside, when Shunjilia turned around, he saw Oming looking at him from afar. Oming raised his eyebrows slightly, looked at him, and laughed out loud. "Didn't you say that a couple should sleep in the same room? This is a room?" Shunjilia didn't expect Oming to live near this corridor. He smiled and said calmly, "She wasn't ready yet, so I waited for her. After all, men always have to be patient with women, don't they?" Hearing this, Oming was in a better mood. He nodded and said, "That's right. I didn't expect young Master Shen to be such a gentleman. It's a good thing."
You flatter me.
Shunjilia smiled. Just as he was about to say something, Oming opened the door and walked into the room. The smile on Shunjilia's face suddenly disappeared. He looked at Eulili's door thoughtfully. When she woke up, it was already noon. Eulili's stomach was growling. She got up and was washing up when she heard the doorbell ringing. Eulili wiped the foam off her face with a towel and looked through the peephole. It was a hotel attendant. Opening the door, the waiter pushed the dining cart in. On the dining cart, there was a note with bold and forceful handwriting. "Enjoy your meal." This was Oming's handwriting. Did Oming know where she was? Opening the lid, there was a simple cheese sandwich and a bottle of milk. Chapter 1038. After the waiter pushed the dining cart in, he bowed slightly to Eulili and said in poor Chinese, "Please enjoy." "Thank you." Eulili put down the lid and looked at the breakfast. She was not in a good mood. After eating breakfast listlessly, she looked at the time and found it was almost 12 o'clock. Today was a sunny day in Paris, and it was bright outside the window. After Eulili put on her clothes, she took a small bag and went out. The tallest building in Paris, the Eiffel Tower. Eulili was careful all the way, for fear of meeting Shunjilia or Oming. Thank God, they didn't seem to notice her. After taking a taxi to the Eiffel Tower, Eulili bought a ticket and went inside. There were a lot of people, but compared with the legendary crowds, Eulili felt it was bearable. Eulili lined up and took the elevator. She looked out of the sightseeing elevator. Finally, almost all the people came in, and the elevator door was closed. There were a lot of people squeezed in, but it was not crowded. The elevator gradually rose, and Eulili looked out at the white sky that was gradually rising. Her eyes were glued to it. So beautiful. The scenery on the ground gradually moved away, which was a completely different feeling from sitting on a plane. There seemed to be someone squeezing behind her, but Eulili clearly felt it, but she didn't care. Her eyes looked out, and it was too much for her eyes to see. Beautiful? A low voice sounded in her ear, and Eulili's body was stiff, and the smile on her lips slightly froze. Looking sideways, she saw a thick black coat with a dark gray scarf. His skin was a little yellow compared to those white people next to him, but it was a very healthy buckwheat color. Eulili's heart skipped a beat. She looked up and was met with a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. It's him. Ming lowered his eyes to look at her. Then, he looked up at the vast expanse of white outside. It's so beautiful. Lily looked at Ming in a daze, but she quickly retracted her gaze, looked outside, and nodded her head. The elevator stopped halfway, but Lily and Ming didn't get off. Lily clearly noticed that Ming's hand was slightly close to her waist. Lily was stiff, turned around, and looked at Ming. Ming looked at her and smiled. You lied to me. Lily didn't understand. She swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue and looked at Ming with surprise. You and Shinjilia are not a couple, are you? They did not sleep together. There was nothing between the two of them, right? If Lily accepted him, no matter what, Shinjilia would never sleep across from her. If Lily accepted him, even if she didn't want to let Shinjilia touch her, she would let him have sex with her. Thinking of this, Ming's eyes were burning. He looked at Lily, took a step closer, put his hands on the bulletproof glass behind her, and whispered, "Stop it. Come back with me, okay?" Lily looked at him. She leaned her back against the railing and looked at him with her eyes wide open. I know you're angry with me. It's my fault. I've gone too far. I'm not good. I have a cheap mouth. You can hit me or scold me. Come back with me. I'll take you to see my parents. I'll introduce you to all my relatives and let them know you. Chapter 1039. Hearing that, Ming had a helpless look on his face. At the same time, the elevator had reached the top floor. The people in the elevator went out. Ming straightened up and pulled her out. He gritted his teeth and said, Lily, you are trying to piss me off. When Lily heard his obviously unhappy voice, she was a little angry, but before she could speak, she was pulled outside. As soon as she came out, the biting cold wind made Lily shiver. Lily hugged her arms and had the illusion that she was going to be frozen into a popsicle. Seeing this, Ming sighed helplessly, unbuttoned his coat, pulled her into his arms, and held her in his coat. Sure enough, hugging is so much warmer. Lily reached out and touched his body. It felt like a cashmere sweater, but she couldn't feel how many pieces he was wearing. It was very warm, but also very thin. Ming felt the cold wind pouring in and subconsciously hugged her tighter. Many people looked at them, and there was envy in the eyes of the girls. Ming whispered in her ear, gritted his teeth, and said, Lily, do you really think that I married Enchanting? Such a big thing, haven't you seen the news? His tone was a little bad, but it also revealed that he was full of sadness. He looked as if he had been angered to the point of anger. Lily looked up at him and remembered that Shinjilia had asked her the same question yesterday. Have you seen the news? Seeing Lily's confused face, Ming wanted to bite her to death. He said fiercely, In order to find you, I have run away from the marriage. What else do you want? Lily's ears seemed to hear the wind. Ming's words, together with the cold wind, made her a little stiff. What? Did I hear it wrong? Because of me? Run away from the marriage? Lily felt a little strange and unbelievable, but she quickly denied it and said, Impossible. If you want to break off the marriage, why wait until the wedding to run away? Isn't that looking for trouble? Ming is not such a person. You really don't watch the news? Ming was defeated by her. He picked up the phone and searched. Ming runs away from the marriage. Sure enough, there was a lot of news as soon as it came out. Breaking news. The young master of the O clan is dissatisfied with the marriage of the Shin clan's daughter and runs away. Scumbag or true love? A second-generation rich man abandons a rich girl for a mistress. Another good man has fallen. A blessed newlywed escapes from their wedding. Lily read them one by one. She clicked her tongue and found it hard to believe. Really? Are you blind? Ming fiercely pinched her face. His face was full of helplessness, but when he saw her expression, he was full of surprise. However, he still deliberately said with a sullen face, Such a big thing, the domestic network is going crazy, and you still don't know. Lily's neck shrank back at the sound of such a low growl. These few days, in order to avoid the news, she did not even connect to the internet. She basically relied on text messages and the ITU to communicate. Hearing such big news, Yulili still found it hard to digest. Looking up at Ming, she asked again, "Really?" Chapter 1040. Yulili was about to refute, but Ming continued to say, "You let me run for nothing, but why did you hook up a gigolo to be cannon fodder? Yesterday, I almost believed it. If I hadn't seen Shinjilia knocking on your door from the opposite room. I don't know what he will do. However, life is really full of excitement and surprises. Fortunately, he didn't leave yesterday. Otherwise, he wouldn't have encountered such a thing." Yulili felt more and more guilty. She couldn't help but look up and refute. "Didn't you always believe that he is my boyfriend? Why do you suddenly not believe it?" "I never believed it. Do you really think I am stupid? Even if you want to find another man, you should find someone like me. A gigolo is not your cup of tea." As he spoke, he took out a small black box from his coat pocket and stuffed it into Yulili's palm. He ordered, "Open it." Yulili's heart suddenly sped up. Looking at the small box, she blinked her eyes. "Is this a ring? But who gives a ring like this? It's so fierce. How is it a proposal?" Yulili raised her eyes and looked at Ming with dissatisfaction. Ming looked away at the moment, as if he didn't care whether she opened it or not. Yulili put the box in her pocket, but before she put it in, she was pulled up by Ming and said, "Open it." Ming's unhappy warning inexplicably made Yulili feel better. Reluctantly, she picked up the small box. The design of the box was very clever and exquisite. After looking for a long time, Yulili found a small notch. She pressed it, and a heart-shaped red box was pushed out. There was a button in the middle of the red box. Yulili pressed it, but suddenly, there was a loud noise in her palm. Yulili was shocked. She reflexively yelled and threw the box in her hand. However, the box in her hand seemed to grow in the palm of her hand, and she couldn't get rid of it. Yulili felt a chill on the ring finger of her left hand. She raised her hand and saw a beautifully designed diamond ring on her hand. The ring on her hand was designed with rattan, and the main ring was a beautiful and brilliant pink diamond. There was a circle of small diamonds around it, which looked very attractive. The entire surface of the ring was designed in the shape of a cartoon cat. It was cute and playful, yet gorgeous and exquisite. So beautiful, so familiar. This was the design she had seen in Ming's study that year. Yulili looked at the ring and was slightly stunned. This ring was actually on her finger? Ming held her hand gently. His pair of shimmering eyes seemed to be sparkling, rippling with bright light. Ming lowered his voice and said word by word, "Marry me. In the future, you will be my Mrs. O, my wife, the real one. No matter what, I'm still his girlfriend, the genuine kind." When Yulili heard that, she chuckled. This fellow actually imitated her words. "What are you laughing at?" Ming was a little annoyed, and his cheeks involuntarily reddened. Looking at her appearance, he was so angry that his teeth itched. "Are you laughing at me?" Yulili smiled, looked away, and shook her head.
No.
Chapter 1041. Yulili's smile widened unconsciously. She turned her head slightly, put her hands around his waist, and asked, "Are you cold?" Changing the subject, Ming was a little unhappy. He pressed her down and said, "I'm cold. It's windy up there. Let's go down. Don't you want to play a little longer?" They had just come up. "If it's too cold, we won't be able to play anymore." Yulili smiled and pulled him. "Put on your clothes. Will you marry me or not?" Ming didn't give up at all. He looked into her eyes and said, "You've already accepted the ring. If you don't marry me, I'll jump down from here with you in my arms." Yulili laughed and felt like a fool. She looked up and stood on her tiptoes to kiss his lips. She said, "Marry me, marry me. Let's go back." Ming was surprised when he heard that. The slight nervousness in his heart instantly turned into joy. Looking at Yulili in front of him, Ming was overjoyed. He hugged her tightly in his arms and shouted, "Yulili, this is definitely the wisest thing you have ever done in your life. Shameless. Well, I'm shameless." I want a wife. Ming was ecstatic and kissed her hard on the face twice. Such an action caused a huge stir in the eyes of the people around. Many people looked over. Some were envious, and some were incredulous. Lily blushed and pulled him. Let's go. There are so many people watching. Unexpectedly, Ming not only didn't avoid her, but looked up and shouted in French, I'm so happy. My girlfriend has agreed to marry me. Hearing that, the people who came to play around all exclaimed. Someone took the lead, and suddenly there was a thunderous applause from the top of the pagoda. Thank you. Thank you. Ming smiled with Lily in his arms. Let's go, wife. Wife. The two completely unfamiliar words made Lily's heart beat fiercely. She looked up and saw Ming's serious and deep eyes. They were as bright as the stars last night, beautiful and magnificent. Lily's face was burning. She couldn't help but stand on her tiptoes and kiss him. However, Ming was even more direct. After holding her firmly, he lowered his head and kissed her deeply. The soft touch had a strange electric shock. Ming pried open her lips and teeth in a domineering manner and gradually went deeper. He stroked her cheek with one finger and inserted the other 4 fingers into her hair. Lily felt as if her breath was being taken away. In the unusually cold air around her, her lips, face, and heart were burning hot. So warm, so warm. The surrounding crowd was in an uproar, exclaiming, clapping, and whistling sounds came one after another. Lily's face burned even hotter, but she didn't avoid him. Instead, she gently responded. She wrapped her arms around his waist and didn't let go. In the face of such a response, Ming felt his heart itch and palpitate incessantly. He loosened his grip on her gently and pulled her towards the elevator. The wind was strong above, but it was much warmer below. When the taxi reached the entrance of the hotel, Lily's phone rang.
It was Shunjilia.
Ming glanced at her, then pulled her up the steps of the hotel and into the lobby. He asked, Why didn't you answer it? Lily hesitated for a moment before answering the phone. Chapter 1042. Did Lily make up with Ming? Shunjilia put down the phone, hung up and walked in Lily's direction. Looking at Lily and Ming, he asked, We're going to get married. Ming took Lily in his arms and announced his ownership. Looking at Shunjilia, Ming smiled and said, Lily has just accepted my proposal. You have no chance, fake boyfriend. When Shunjilia heard this, his face suddenly changed. He looked at Lily and found that she did not speak or refute. He suddenly felt a little funny and asked, Really?
Yes.
Lily nodded and raised her hand to show the ring that Ming had just put on her finger.
Really?
Shunjilia looked at the ring and felt that it was indescribably dazzling. How could this guy agree so easily? What are you thinking? He used to be so mean to you, and you can still forgive him. He almost raped you in public, and Lily's heart felt like it was stabbed by something, and it was burning. Ming's face changed, and he said angrily, Shut up. Am I wrong? To treat a woman like this, Ming, do you still think you're a man? Do you think you're worthy of her? Shunjilia sneered. Lily is more suited for someone better, and I'm not better. This matter was a thorn between Ming and Lily, and it could not be easily removed. Ming's heart suddenly panicked. Looking at Lily, his hand holding her hand became tighter. He was afraid. Lily clearly felt the change in his mood, so she looked up at him. But you lied to me. Lily looked at Shunjilia. You know what I am afraid of. Ming and Shinmanting are not married at all, but you told me that their wedding was very smooth. Shunjilia. Why did you lie to me? Shunjilia looked very calm and said, I don't want you to be with him. Ming's face became more serious and he sneered, You are a mistress, and yet you are so self-righteous. Well done, Mr. Shin. However, Shunjilia acted as if he hadn't heard her and said, He doesn't deserve your love. No matter how much you love him, how he treats you. Don't you think it's unfair? As he spoke, he looked at Lily and said, When you were cold, he didn't accompany you through it. Otherwise, you would have been cured by now. This disease is not incurable. As long as you adjust your mentality, it can be cured. But he not only didn't help you, but also said such harsh words to you several times.
Can you bear it?
Shinjilia, shut up. There's no need for you to meddle in our affairs. I am her doctor. Her illness is my business. Shinjilia said firmly, as he looked at Lily. Oming's face darkened. It was precisely because Shinjilia was her psychiatrist that he understood her so well. Shinjilia knew very well how much power his words had over Lily. Oming panicked. He held Lily's hand and whispered, "Let's not listen to him. He is up to no good. Let's find other psychiatrists. All of them are better than him." Lily pursed her lips and looked at Shinjilia in front of her. She felt a little complicated and said, "Mr. Shin." Mr. Shin before, she had either called him Shinjilia or Jilia. It was the first time that she had called him so strangely. Chapter 1043. Thank you for this period of time. I also know that you are very concerned about my affairs, but I have my own choice. I can't lie to myself. I just like him, I love him, and I am willing to be with him. I'm sorry, during this time Lily felt a little guilty. During this time, Lily really wanted to develop a relationship with Shinjilia.
Yi Qianqian was right.
If she wanted to end a relationship, she had to start a new one. However, she couldn't forget, seeing her expression. Shinjilia shook his head helplessly and said, "Forget it. Since you have made up your mind, I won't meddle in your business anymore. But Lily, you deserve better. This man is a scumbag." With Lily's words, Oming's mood calmed down a lot. He looked at Shinjilia and chuckled. "Young Master Shin, I'm a scumbag. What about someone who doesn't know how to snatch someone's love and keeps asking my girlfriend to leave me?" Shinjilia smiled. "I just feel it's unfair for Lily." "I think you feel it's unfair for Shinmanting, right? You know what kind of feelings I have for you, Lily, so in order to avenge your sister, you encourage my woman to leave me, right?" Oming looked at Shinjilia and said, "If you have time to deal with me, it's better to guard against your good brother." "Big brother? Shinluoan?" Shinjilia felt a little strange when he heard Oming's words. Lily was also shocked and looked at Oming. Does he also know something? The relationship between Shinluo and Shinmanting is unclear. If Shinmanting didn't get married, Shinluo and wouldn't let her go, right? Shinjilia looked at Oming, trying to find something fishy on his face. But Oming snorted and said, "Do you know why I ran away from my marriage? I think you already know the secret between my family and your family."
Yes.
The Shin family were all doctors, and Shinluo's main focus was on chemical medicine. When he heard that Oming's mother had a strange disease, Shinluo became interested. Who knew that he would actually develop a drug that could control the disease by accident? However, it was only control. Logically speaking, for his mother's sake, even if Oming was unwilling to marry Shinmanting, he would still have some scruples. However, on the day of their wedding, he embarrassed Shinmanting so much. Such a matter was unprecedented in the entire Shin family. The old lady was angry several times because of this, but there was nothing she could do. Upon hearing Oming's words, Shinjilia's doubts, which had been burning in his heart, suddenly grew stronger. "I made a deal with your eldest brother." Oming looked at Shinjilia's suspicious expression and smiled. "As for what the deal was, it's not convenient for me to reveal it. You can ask Shinluo N." However, there was no doubt about it. The reason why Oming ran away on the day of his wedding was also because of this deal. Shinjilia couldn't figure it out. Why would Big Brother do that? In this way, although Shinmanting would suffer the most, there was no doubt that as her maiden family, the entire Shin family would be disgraced. Shinluo had always been a person who valued his family's reputation. How could he have reached such an agreement with Oming? Strange. Chapter 1044. Oming was calm and said, "If there is nothing else, we will go. Young Master Shin, please take care of yourself." Then he held Lily in his arms and walked toward the elevator. Shinjilia, on the other hand, stood rooted to the ground, deep in thought. The third day of the runaway marriage. Shen Manting still locked herself in the room and didn't see the light of day. She didn't want to go out at all. She ate and drank in the room. It was not only because she was in a bad mood, but also because she didn't dare to go out. She was afraid to see Shen Luo, and at the same time, she wanted to show off to the O family. Now, the media outside were all reporting on Shen Manting's situation, and they were also constantly monitoring Shen Manting. As long as she gave the outside world the illusion that she had been sad, then the O family was likely to change their mind. After all, Oming didn't have the final say in the O family. As long as she worked hard, maybe she could really marry Oming. No matter what, she couldn't be involved with Shen Luoan. She couldn't. Shen Manting stood in front of the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. There were water drops on her face, no makeup, messy hair, and pajamas. Her face was pale. Sister Zhang was a little worried about Shen Manting's situation. She knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. While panicking, she didn't dare to act rashly. She listened carefully to the movement inside. Just when Sister Zhang was considering whether to find the key to open the door was directly opened from the inside. Shen Manting didn't look very good. Sister Zhang was a little worried and said, "Miss, do you want to go out for a walk? You haven't gone out for several days. You will be suffocated." Shen Manting always liked to move and didn't like to be quiet. If it were in the past, it would be impossible for her to stay quietly like this for a few days. These past few days, he had been acting strangely. It seemed that Oming's runaway marriage had brought a huge blow to her. Thinking of this, Sister Zhang felt pity in her eyes, and her heart didn't feel very good. Shen Manting saw her emotions and said, "I'm fine, Sister Zhang. You go ahead. I'll sleep for a while. If I need you, I'll call you again." Sister Zhang nodded and said, "Okay, then remember to rest well. Don't let your imagination run wild, okay?" "Well, thank you, Sister Zhang." Shen Manting smiled and closed the door. Sister Zhang was a little worried, but she really had other things to do. She looked at the door and quickly left. Shen Manting locked the door, then lay down and fell into a deep sleep. In her dream, Shen Manting walked to a river. Oming was enjoying the shade under a big tree by the river. When he saw her, he smiled at her and reached out his hand. Shen Manting paused for a moment. After some hesitation, she walked toward him, but soon she heard laughter coming from behind her. She looked back and saw that it was the mistress that Oming had kept for many years. Shen Manting watched as Lily walked towards Oming, and then the two of them hugged each other happily. Shen Manting stood rooted to the ground and stared at them in a daze. After a while, a tall figure descended from the sky. Shen Luoan's gentle face had an indecipherable smile on it. He pounced on her and pressed her into the river. Shen Luoan's face was as gentle as jade. Chapter 1045. This feeling was very clear. There seemed to be an indescribable lingering touch between her lips and teeth, penetrating her nerves layer by layer. Shen Manting opened her eyes with difficulty. At first glance, she saw the extremely familiar face, which was also the most terrible nightmare. Shen Luoan. When Shen Manting saw the face in front of her, she was shocked. She struggled with her hands, but was firmly held down by him. Shen Luo and looked at Shen Manting in front of him with his gentle eyes. With a smile on his face, he squinted his eyes and said softly, "What? Didn't you just call me very happily?" Shen Manting felt like she was struck by lightning. She called him? Impossible. "I didn't." Shen Luo and looked at Shen Manting in front of him and raised his eyebrows with great interest. He whispered, "It's a pity that I didn't record it. Otherwise, I would let you see how much you love me. You even call my name in your dreams." "Impossible. You're dreaming," Shen Manting denied with a look of certainty. "Unless I'm crazy, I wouldn't call your name." Shen Luoan's eyes dimmed. He slightly approached her and said dangerously, "Are you sure? Are you crazy? You did call me that just now." In fact, she was calling Oming just now. Shen Luoan was very sure that Shen Manting didn't love Oming. Otherwise, She wouldn't have been so calm these days and wouldn't have stayed at home. But now that he heard Shin Manting calling Oming's name in her sleep, Shin Luo An's original certainty suddenly began to waver. When Shin Manting heard this, she struggled hard and pushed him away. But Shin Luo An's body was still on top of her and never left her body. Damn it, Shin Manting gritted her teeth and sneered. Really? Maybe I'm really crazy. Even if I love Ming, I can't fall in love with a big pervert like you. When Shin Luo An heard this, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and there seemed to be a penetrating cold light in his eyes. When Shin Manting met Shin Luo An's gaze, she was a little scared, but she quickly shrank her neck. Looking at Shin Luo An, she summoned up her courage and provoked. Why? Don't you let me tell the truth? Shin Manting. Shin Luo An said through gritted teeth. It was as if the words were squeezed out from between his teeth. Just when she thought he was going to scold her, he smirked coldly. He lowered his head and attacked her snow-white chest. A corner of her delicate and fair skin was gently sucked out. Her whole body trembled violently. Then, as if it was a conditioned reflex, she struggled and shouted, Shin? Ugh, Shin Luo An covered her mouth and warned her cruelly. You want to scream? Then how are you going to explain that I raped you? Shin Manting's breathing quickened, and she struggled unwillingly. Shin Luo An smiled warmly, as if he was still the harmless, gentle, and elegant young man. But it was this man who looked so pretentious, as her elder brother, who did such a thing to her. Don't be impulsive. No matter how much the family dotes on you, you're just an adopted daughter. If I say that you seduced me into your room, who do you think Grandma will believe? Shin Manting didn't move and stared at him in disbelief. Good sister, don't move. Don't scream. Shin Luo An gently released his hand and looked at her with a smile on his lips. Shin Manting panicked and asked, What do you want to do? Do you still need to ask? Sleep with you.
Dash.
Chapter 1046. Shin Manting's eyes widened, and she desperately shrank back. However, she couldn't escape. Shin Luo An sealed her lips, not leaving a single gap between them. Shin Manting didn't dare to scream. Old Mrs. Shin had been very kind to her, but if Shin Luo An made a false accusation, the Shin family would definitely not protect her. The Shin family couldn't afford to lose face. Shin Luo An was the pride of the Shin family, and there couldn't be any stain on it. But did she deserve to be bullied by him? Shin Manting's eyes were red, and tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes.
Why?
Why would you rather give yourself to Ming? Why are you so unwilling to let me touch you? Why are you willing to give yourself to Ming?
Huh?
Shin Luo An pressed her legs and hands hard, and pressed her under his body. Which part of me is inferior to Ming? Shin Manting shook her head desperately, and her face was rubbed by his palms. While struggling, a sharp pain suddenly attacked her. Shin Manting's hands suddenly pulled the sleeves of his shirt and shook her head violently. However, Shin Luo An didn't have the slightest mercy, and he attacked her forcefully. Shin Manting's tears flowed more and more, and she bit his palm with great strength. Shin Luo An frowned, but he didn't withdraw his hand. His breathing was slightly rapid, and he sighed and lifted her up. Shin Manting felt like a rag doll, which was casually played with and then thrown on the bed to fend for itself. After Shin Luo An tidied her up, he began to tidy himself up. Shin Luo An looked at Shin Manting, who was lying on the bed with a blank look on her face. He squeezed the last button on his shirt and glanced at her from the corner of his eye. He smiled warmly and said, You really didn't let me down, my good sister. He was satisfied with her chastity, satisfied with her jerkiness. As long as you say it, I can marry you at any time. Shin Luo An looked down at her from above. His gaze was gentle, and his white shirt made him look even more like a handsome older brother next door. Unfortunately, he was her older brother. Shin Manting silently shed tears and closed her eyes. Shin Luo An couldn't maintain the smile on his face. He turned around, opened the door, and walked out. Yi Yu was about to deliver the meal to Shin Manting. When she saw him coming out of Shin Manting's room, She was slightly surprised and shouted, "Brother Luo, and did you go to see Manting?" Shin Luo and took her hand and glanced at the tray in her hand. He quickly took it and said, "Well, I'll send it over. I've just persuaded her." Yet, after Yi Yu handed the tray to him, she felt a little strange. Shin Luo and cared too much about his sister, who wasn't even his biological sister. Was it an illusion? Yi Yu frowned and followed them. She said, "I haven't seen my aunt for a few days. I'll go too." "There's no need for that. You go ahead with your work. We'll have dinner together later," Shin Luo and said nonchalantly. When Yi Yu heard that, her eyes lit up. This was the first time Shin Luo and had suggested having dinner with her. Nodding repeatedly, Yi Yu was a little surprised and said, "Then I'll go help in the kitchen." "Okay, be careful." Yi Yu's heart was bursting with joy. She nodded her head and, like a happy bird, turned around and walked away gracefully. Shin Luo and opened the door again, but found that it couldn't be opened. "Is it locked from the inside?" Shin Luo and curled his lips and murmured, "Naive." He took the key from his pocket and opened the door, but found that Shin Manting was no longer in bed. Chapter 1047. Shin Luo and had an ominous feeling in his heart. After putting down the food, he knocked on the door of the bathroom. He wanted to open it, but it was locked from the inside. He tried to twist it, but it wouldn't budge. "Manting." Shin Luo and knocked on the door and shouted, "Are you inside? Open the door." However, it was still quiet. Suddenly, the sound of something falling to the ground came from inside. It was like a thunderclap that hit Shin Luo and's heart. Shin Luo and was shocked and knocked on the door, but there was no response. Someone outside heard the noise and quickly rushed over. But no matter how much he knocked on the door and shouted, the person inside didn't come out to open the door. Shin Luo and's face darkened. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He growled, "Get out of the way." As he spoke, he lifted the solid wood stool in the room and smashed it against the lock of the bathroom door. It didn't budge, so Shin Luo and smashed it a few more times before the lock showed signs of loosening. He slammed the door open and saw Shin Manting leaning against the glass door of the shower. There was a bottle of shower gel and shampoo in front of her, and there was foam hanging from the corner of her mouth. The liquid in the two bottles had been emptied. Seeing the scene, Shin Luo's head suddenly shook, and a large blank suddenly attacked him, destroying all his consciousness and reason without a trace. "Oh my God!" There was a cry of alarm, and the people behind him suddenly ran to where Shin Manting was. When they saw her like this, they were shocked and shouted, "Oh my God, an ambulance! Call an ambulance!" For a moment, the scene was chaotic. Shin Luo and was stunned on the spot. He saw and heard people running around, but he didn't know what to do at all. In other words, Shin Luo and was already dumbfounded. She committed suicide? I just did that to her, so is she going to commit suicide? Impossible. The Shin Manting that Shin Luo and knew wasn't such a person. He was at a loss as to what to do. He took Shin Manting's body from Sister Zhang's hands and stood up with her in his arms. His heart was filled with panic and emptiness. He shouted, "Get out of my way." Paris, France. In the oversized presidential suite, a man and a woman were entangled passionately. The sound of their rapid breathing was particularly eye-catching in the quiet room. Very soon, however, his cell phone rang. In this originally spacious space, the ringtone was even more reverberating. Oming raised his head and glanced at his mother in the midst of his busy schedule. Oming gently released Eulili and said, "It's my mom. I need to take a call." Eulili was lying on the bed. Her clothes were messy. Her bra had been untied and hung loosely. On the other hand, Oming was only left with a shirt and trousers. His thick winter clothes had been taken off. After Oming calmed his breathing, he picked up the phone and said, "Mom." Xiao Ziqing sounded like she was crying as she shouted, "Lil, oh, come back quickly. It's all your fault, you little rascal." Xiao Ziqing rarely cried, and it was extremely rare to see her sobbing like she did today. Oming's heart skipped a beat. He calmed down and asked, "Mom, tell me slowly. What happened?" Chapter 1048. Hearing his mother's words, Ming retorted, "How is that possible?" He subconsciously thought of Shin Manting's arrogant, beautiful, and insufferably arrogant face. Shin Manting committed suicide? How is that possible? Ming would never believe that Shin Manting committed suicide because Ming ran away from the wedding. However, at this critical juncture, everyone would naturally attribute Shin Manting's suicide to Ming. Even Ming's parents and the Shin family would be no exception. However, Ming didn't think it was that simple. Shin Manting didn't really like him. How could she have committed suicide because of his rejection? That's impossible. Something's wrong. Hearing Ming's words, Qiao Ziqing was even angrier. She scolded. What's wrong with Manting? She was well-behaved and sensible. She was beautiful and had a good family background. More importantly, she loved you wholeheartedly. Why did you have to be entangled with that mistress? Now, everyone is saying that you abandoned Manting for your mistress, which led to her suicide. Xiao, I thought you were no longer a child and had your own ideas about everything you did. But how could you be so wrong this time? Gun Yenshin thought. How do you expect us to face them in the future?
Huh.
Ming pursed his lips when he heard Qiao Ziqing's words. When he was about to speak, his mother interrupted him. Qiao Ziqing went on and on. Towards the end, she burst into tears and shouted, Manting is such a good girl. It's hard to come by someone like her. If anything happens to Manting, will you be able to live with your conscience? Shen Luowen asked. Mom, calm down. I don't think it's that simple. Regardless of whether it's that simple or not, the O family has become the target of everyone's disdain.
Where are you now?
Paris. You went to find that girl, didn't you? Qiao Ziqing's words were harsh and angry. Ming didn't speak, but his attitude was tantamount to acquiescence. Good. Qiao Ziqing said 3 times in a row, each louder than the last. Finally, she shouted, Come back here right now. Qiao Ziqing's angry voice came from the phone. When Ming was about to speak, Qiao Ziqing had already hung up. His voice was so loud that even Yu Lily could hear him clearly. Ming helplessly put his hands down and looked at Yu Lily in front of him. His original interest in her was gone. Yu Lily frowned and asked, What's going on? Shin Manting committed suicide. We don't know if she's dead or alive. Our family has probably been bombarded by the media. It was not hard to imagine the complexity and danger involved. He got up and said, I have to go back first. As he spoke, he put on his clothes, tidied up his shirt, and buttoned up the buttons one by one. However, looking at Ming, it seemed that he had no intention of bringing her along. Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat and asked, Aren't you going to bring me along? Chapter 1049. When Yu Lily heard that, she felt a little lost. Ming fastened his cufflinks and looked at her with a pair of peach blossom eyes. He held her face in his hands and continued, Yu Lily, now I am not sure that I can protect you. When I go back, I will be criticized and my reputation will be ruined. If Shin Manting is rescued, I will tell her clearly. But if Shin Manting dies, I will be the biggest sinner in everyone's eyes. Moreover, behind this big sinner, Yu Lily's existence was probably more important than Shin Manting's life and death. Although Ming felt that the reason behind Shin Manting's suicide was certainly not simple, many Chinese netizens did not pay much attention to whether it was caused by Ming's escape from the marriage. For Chinese netizens, joining in the fun was more important than any justice. The result that everyone had determined at the beginning was what everyone hoped for. Ming was very clear about the possible results. At this moment, Ming had already prepared for the worst. He absolutely could not let Yu Lily return to China. Looking at Yu Lily, Ming said word by word, I will solve everything and then come to Paris to pick you up. During this time, you will live here and don't go back. Remember? Yu Lily pursed her lips and nodded. Ming gently kissed her on the forehead. Then, he put on his clothes and walked out. In China, Shen Manting's suicide caused a stir. Because it was discovered quickly, after some rescue and gastric lavage, Shen Manting's condition was not serious. Shen Luo's mood was originally panicked and helpless. When Shen Manting woke up, his mind gradually became clear. Looking at Shen Manting lying on the bed with her eyes closed and face pale, Shen Luo's anger was even more uncontrollable. Shen Manting had clearly calculated the time her family would deliver the food and deliberately locked the door from the inside. After that, she put on such a show. Her goal was to expose her actions and stop her. In this way, her suicide would not be successful, but at the same time, it could ignite the public opinion on the internet and push Oming to the forefront. Retreating in order to advance, Oming fell into the land of injustice. Shen Manting's suicide had already been the subject of much discussion, and the attention on the matter skyrocketed in an instant. In this way, Shen Manting would naturally be labeled as a victim. At the same time, she would be in a vulnerable position. If Shen Luo leaked anything at this time, it wouldn't just be about Shen Manting and Oming. Shen Manting's move killed 3 birds with 1 stone. She pushed herself to the surface, warned Shen Luo, and took revenge on Oming. No one would dare to touch her easily. So, Shen Manting is so smart? Shen Luo looked at Shen Manting and sneered. After staring at her for a long time, he finally turned around and walked out. Yi Yu arrived at that moment. She saw Shen Luo and asked, "How is Auntie?" However, Shen Luo didn't spare her a glance and quickly walked away. When Oming returned to Kingstown, he was surrounded by a large group of media. "Mr. O, you came back from Miss Yu's place, right? What do you think of Miss Shen's suicide? I heard that you've been with Miss Yu for many years. You've been two-timing all along. Is that true?" All kinds of media platforms were talking at the same time, but Oming never said a word. Chapter 1050. Under the protection of the bodyguards, Oming quickly left the airport. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word. After getting in the car, Oming left. The news of Oming's return to China exploded on the internet again. Netizens immediately flooded Weibo, and all kinds of news were on the hot search list. The title of the first hot topic on Weibo was impressively eye-catching. The young master of the O Group returns before the new year and is suspected to visit his ex-fiancée. Below, a large number of keyboard warriors flooded the screen, but all of them were cursing. "What were you doing earlier? Running away from marriage for a mistress. Now that you have committed suicide, you come back to pretend?
Bah.
A bitch and a dog will last forever. Shen Manting has waited for you for 4 years. Where can you find such a woman? You are blind. From today on, boycott all the products under the O Group, including TT. Not only on the internet, but even around the O family, Qiao Ziqing's friends and neighbors gave the O family a strange look. On the way back, Oming saw a lot of news. His heart sank, but he also felt a little lucky. Fortunately, he didn't let Yu Manting come back to China. Otherwise, things would definitely become more complicated. Oming went to the hospital to see Shen Manting immediately. Outside the hospital, there were reporters squatting at the door of the hospital, waiting for Oming to appear. As soon as they saw his car arrive, the group of reporters rushed forward, scrambling to stretch out their microphones and ask sharp and sensitive questions. "Mr. Oming, are you here to repent? Mr. Oming, why did you run away from marriage? I heard that you did this because of a mistress you have kept for many years. Mr. Oming, I heard that Miss Shen is still in a coma in the hospital, and her life is uncertain. Do you feel guilty in your heart? Mr. Oming, what are you going to do next? Do you want to break off the engagement with Miss Shen this time?" The bodyguards cleared the way. Oming, wearing black sunglasses, was expressionless and silent. After entering the hospital, Oming was taken by the bodyguards to the direction of the VIP ward where Shen Manting was. On the way there, he met someone who was reasonable, yet unexpected. Shen Luo was wearing a long, cream-colored windbreaker, black trousers, and a white shirt. He looked a little thin in such a cold winter. On that gentle and handsome face, There was obvious exhaustion. Green stubble had appeared. When he saw Ming, he was slightly surprised. The two men stood in the corridor. They stopped and looked at each other. Ming took off his sunglasses and looked at Shenluo, and in front of him. There was a dangerous look in his eyes as he said, "Let's talk." It was not a question, but an order. How could Shenluo and not hear the displeasure in Ming's tone? He smiled and nodded. "Let's go." The two of them went up to the rooftop of the hospital. There was no wind today, and the sun was shining brightly. But the cold air was still raging. Ming looked at Shenluo, who was wearing thin clothes in front of him, and said, "Enchanting wouldn't commit suicide because I ran away from the wedding. What did you say to her?" Shenluo smiled and raised his eyebrows. "You're wrong. She committed suicide because she couldn't withstand the public opinion and psychological pressure. Do you think you know her so well?" Chapter 1051. In order to escape from him, what Enchanting did was crueler than he could imagine. Shenluo's gentle eyes became gloomy. He looked at Ming with his lips slightly raised and said, "Do you come back now to marry her?" Ming smiled. "Will you agree?" The smile on Shenluo's face gradually disappeared. He looked at him and slightly raised his eyebrows. "Try?" "I can't afford to try." Ming took out a cigarette from his pocket, took out one, and slowly lit it. He slowly said, "I already have one. I'll leave this one for you." As he spoke, he slowly exhaled a pale, white smoke. "My woman is still waiting for me to go back and marry her." Shenluo joked, "I didn't expect you to be so loyal." "It's easy to say, but it's not the same as you. You like one and marry the other." "Oh." Ming looked at him coldly. "I'm still curious. What did you do to Enchanting? Don't say stupid things like running away from marriage." "I don't believe it." When Shenluo was about to speak, his cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID, but his expression did not change. He continued, "No matter what the reason is, no one will suspect me. You'd better take care of yourself." After answering the phone, Shenluo turned to look at Ming with a deep meaning. After hanging up the phone, Shenluo looked at Ming and said, "Enchanting woke up, and your mother is also there." As he spoke, he turned around and walked down the stairs. Ming looked at his back, and his eyes darkened. Seeing Shenluo's reaction, even if Ming was stupid and naive, he knew that it must have something to do with this guy. But what did Shenluo do? Ming's matter was very sensational. Since she came to Paris, it was the first time she turned on the internet, which she hadn't used for a long time. She randomly searched, and all kinds of news about Ming popped up. Looking at the striking headlines, Lily clicked on them and found that many things were related to her. Deep dig. The mistress of O's young master is the editor of his comics. Ming's mistress revealed. The woman who defeated Shen's daughter is actually an orphan. Counting the women who have nothing but easily capture the favor of the rich second generation, did the people in the country care so much about her now? If she went back, she would probably be drowned by the saliva of a single person. The reputation of being a mistress was really hateful in the hearts of the keyboard warriors in China. Lily knew that it was safest for her to stay in China, but she couldn't help but feel disappointed. When would she be able to stand beside Ming openly? Suddenly, a message popped up on Weibo, and the text shocked Lily. Ming's mistress's Weibo exposure. Yuli, miss you. What is it like to force the legal wife to commit suicide? #topic. Shen's daughter's suicide. There was a picture below, which was one of the few selfies that Ming had taken with Lily. Lily smiled like a flower, and Ming, who was wearing a burgundy suit, stood behind her, looking at her with a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. They were so close that the tip of Ming's nose almost touched her hair. This was a photo from 5 years ago. At that time, Lily had a young and childish face. Chapter 1052. Stealthily come, stealthily go. Too shameless. The mistress should go to hell. All expectations failed. 2333. Hee, she looks young, but how can she be so coquettish? Fox, Da'een 11 hides in the world. She is young but has a big heart. It is really easy to be a mistress. Sure enough, without the education of parents, she has no bottom line. Maylene shopping agent. The lip color of the mistress in the picture is the classic look of the C family. I want a private message. Eulili looked at the Weibo and refreshed it. All of a sudden, there were several more comments, each of which was scolding her. Eulili felt uncomfortable. Suddenly, her mobile phone vibrated and she received a private message from Weibo. Unfollowed person's information. You look good. You can seduce Oming. You must be good at kung fu, right? How much money does Oming give you a month? I will give you double. Eulili was furious and opened the dialogue box to edit. Go to hell. However, before she sent it out, Eulili deleted those words one by one. No, I can't be angry. I can't admit it. However, there were several private messages. Shameless mistress. Go to hell. Are you the mistress? You can do anything at such a young age, but you have to destroy other people's families. Smile, smile. Go to hell. Don't let me see you, or I will beat you every time I see you. Picture. The picture sent was a selfie of Eulili. Her face was painted with delicate makeup, and she looked high-spirited, petite, and beautiful. This Eulili was the Eulili from 5 years ago. Eulili browsed and found that there were a lot of replies to her Weibo, but all of them were scolding her. She was angry, but she couldn't show up. If Eulili clicked like or commented, she would definitely become the target of public criticism without hesitation. Eulili simply logged out of the account and threw the phone aside. But soon, she thought of the bug in her mind. Now Oming should have returned to China, and he should go to the hospital to see Enchanting as soon as possible. Eulili picked up the phone again and opened it. Sure enough, she heard the voice coming over there. There was the voice of a middle-aged woman and Enchanting. Auntie, I'm sorry. Eulili could clearly hear the sobs in Enchanting's voice. I'm sorry, I really can't take it anymore. These days, everyone has been sympathizing with me. Just before Oming ran away from the wedding, I thought I could be a good daughter-in-law to you, to be filial to you, to respect you, and to live with Oming. But I really didn't expect that Oming would run away from the wedding. Previously, I told my classmates and friends that I would have a happy life after marriage, but now I can't do it anymore. This feeling is like being stripped alive and thrown in front of them. Manting, the middle-aged woman, also cried and said with I and said I and. Chapter 1053. The conversation continued, and Eulili guessed that this middle-aged woman was undoubtedly Oming's mother. She seemed to really like Enchanting. Listening to her tone, it was as if she was feeling sorry for her own daughter. Enchanting and Oming's mother already had such a deep relationship. That's right, it's been 4 years. How many 4 years can there be in a life? In these 4 years, Enchanting had been with Oming's mother as her future daughter-in-law. Eulili couldn't compare with her at all. However, before Oming's mother could make the call, she stopped. Then she heard Oming shout, Xiao O, it was Oming. And Shenluo. You're awake? Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Shenluo, and asked several questions, but Enchanting didn't say anything. The situation seemed a little awkward, and at the same time, she heard light footsteps coming from behind. It was Oming's footsteps. Eulili pricked up her ears to listen to the movement over there. It seemed that there were a lot of people coming. Now, Eulili knew that it was Shenluo and Oming, Oming's mother and Enchanting. Mom, I'll talk to her. You go back first. I'll come home later. Oming's voice was familiar, but distant. Eulili was glad that her little virus hadn't been scanned clearly. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known what they were talking about. When Xiao Ziqing heard her son's words, she looked at Enchanting and Oming, stood up, turned around and saw Shenluo, and obviously not very good expression. She smiled and said, Luo, and it's been hard on you these days. You've been by Manting's side. You're welcome. Manting is my sister. It's my duty. Shenluo and's face was gentle, and he nodded slightly. Xiao Ziqing nodded and smiled a little gratified. She said, Manting is really lucky to have such a good brother like you. Good brother. Shun Manting heard Xiao Ziqing's praise for Shen Luo, and her hands under the quilt slightly clenched. The hatred in her heart suddenly overflowed in her eyes, and overflowed to the tip of her eyebrows. When Shen Luo heard this, he glanced at Shen Manting, who was lying on the bed. The smile on his face widened, and he turned his gaze back to her. He nodded slightly and said, You flatter me. Go out, big brother, Shen Manting said without looking up. Her voice was a little dry as she said, Auntie, thank you for coming to see me. Manting, there's no need to stand on ceremony between us, Xiao Ziqing said with a straight face. Xiao, remember to come home when you're done.
Got it.
Oming waved his hand. Oming watched as Xiao Ziqing and Shen Luo walked out together. He then sat down on the chair that Xiao Ziqing had been sitting on. Shen Manting, what exactly do you want? You know that I hate you. Don't you think it's despicable of you to use such means? As soon as Oming spoke, he did not hesitate to ridicule her. When Shen Manting heard that, she looked up at him. This was Oming's true colors, especially when he was in front of her. For 4 years, he didn't hide it at all. He clearly showed his disgust for her in front of her. He didn't even want to pretend, which was very annoying. However, she had no choice. Oming, Shen Manting called out, and her eyes were pleading. Marry me, okay?
Dash.
Chapter 1054. Her voice was neither high nor low, but when she looked at him with a pair of slightly tired and listless eyes, there was a hint of pleading in her eyes. Oming looked at her and smiled. Shen Manting, I said that I wouldn't marry you. Do you think that by committing suicide, you can force me to marry you? I beg you. Oming, I beg you. Marry me. Shen Manting leaned toward Oming and grabbed his sleeves with both hands. Her eyes were full of helplessness. Why are you doing this? You promised me before that I would help you save Auntie and you would marry me. I have waited for you for 4 years. Can't you pretend? It doesn't matter if you don't love me after marriage. It doesn't matter if we can only have a marriage of convenience. Marry me, and I will help you. Why me? Oming was puzzled. He looked at Shen Manting coldly and said, You know that I won't have feelings for you. Why do you like me? You and Shen Luo, and hearing the name Shen Luo, and Shen Manting's face turned pale, and she shouted out reflexively, No.
No?
What kind of answer is that? Seeing her reaction, Oming felt that there was definitely more to it than meets the eye. What happened between you and Shen Luo, and... Oming looked at her hand that was pulling his sleeves, and his eyes were slightly deep. He continued to say, Shen Manting, you are a smart person. This suicide is definitely not because of me. No one was stupid. Shen Manting used him more than she loved him. Oming was clear about that. Shen Manting also clearly realized that Oming was talking about suicide, not suicide. In other words, he might have already noticed something. A scheming glint flashed across her beautiful big eyes. A plan had already sprouted in her heart. Seeing that she did not speak, Oming continued, If I can run away from marriage once, I will run away a second time. No one will be happy in a forced marriage, and you don't like me at all. Why bother to force us to be together like this? Oming, why don't we make a deal? Shen Manting looked at Oming and said, Don't you like that mistress? That woman surnamed you. You can keep her by your side. If we get married, I will absolutely not hinder you. I just want the title of Mrs. O. You can live with her and be with her every day. I won't mind, I mind. Oming's face darkened. Why should my woman be wronged? You are wrong, Oming. You are not wronging her, but me. Do you think that if you don't marry of me, you can marry her? Don't you know how much your mother values family and background? If you really want to be with that woman, you won't be able to get past your mother. She sneered and said, Even if you don't marry me, Zhang Manting and Li Manting will replace me tomorrow and become your wife. You of any one of you of you. Shen of shun of her. Her words made Oming's face darkened. I'm the only one who can do that. I agree to this marriage of convenience. This is already my biggest concession. I just don't have a title. If that woman really loves you and wants to be with you, she won't care about these things on the surface, right? Shun of you, Lily's heart clearly, like a knife, cut again and again. Chapter 1055. Shun Manting's words were very reasonable, but it was also a very real problem. Yu Lily had nothing. How could she be worthy of Oming? In other words, even if Yu Lily's parents were alive, how could they compare with Shun Manting? The Shun family might not be as rich as the O family, but as a famous family in the capital, many people couldn't compare with them. How could a family like the O family not like such a daughter-in-law? If that woman really loves you and wants to be with you, she won't care about these things on the surface, right? Shun Manting's words were like pearls. What Shun Manting was talking about was the status. If she loved him, would she really not care about these things? But she cared. She was damned concerned and damned greedy. Was it because she didn't love him enough? Yu Lily's eyes looked down, slightly dark. Shun Manting's voice fell, her eyes fixed on Oming, and she continued to say, if she doesn't want to, it can only mean that she doesn't love you enough. Or, she is with you for your money. It's a good chance to test her. You're wrong. Oming interrupted her, looked at Shun Manting and said seriously, the more I love someone, the more I want to give her all the good things. My wife can only be her. I love her, and I can only have her. Shun Manting heard this and snorted. Oming, it's not appropriate to say this in front of me. According to my understanding of you, you are not suitable to say this kind of sour smell of love. It's disgusting. Whether you believe it or not, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Shun Manting, let's just leave it at that. There's no need to entangle each other any further. Oming pulled his hand back and said coldly, Shun Luo, and treats you very well. Cherish him. Oming, you're crazy. He is my brother. Even though what he had done to her had long surpassed the boundaries of siblings. Thinking of what he did to her that day, Shun Manting couldn't help but clench her teeth, and a sense of shame and taboo suddenly swept over her. In the past few days in a coma, Shun Manting had been having a dream. A nightmare in which she fell into the punishment of God, fell into hell, and was despised by thousands of people. In the dream, Yu asked her hysterically why she did this. Shun Manting was speechless, and the embarrassment in her heart was brought from the dream to reality. Especially when she saw Yu, Shun Manting didn't dare to look at her eyes, and she didn't dare to face Yu's kindness. He narrowed his eyes and said, You know that you and Shun Luo and are not related by blood at all. You can't call it a relationship at all. Even if you really have a shameful relationship. Shut up. Shun Manting reacted violently. She looked up and shouted, You're the one who has a shameful relationship. Oming was interrupted. He narrowed his eyes and looked at her suspiciously. Chapter 1056. Are you threatening me? I'm stating the facts. I think you have already experienced the power of public opinion in China. I don't need to remind you how unlucky you can be. You should go and come back to me after thinking about it. No, I'll tell you the answer now. Oming looked at Shun Manting coldly and said word by word, I can only have one wife in my life, one woman, and that is you, Lily. I can't marry you, and I can't marry other women. I'll go back and deal with my mother myself.
You don't have to worry about it.
While speaking, Oming had been paying attention to Shun Manting's expression. Sure enough, Shun Manting's expression was very ugly. Seeing her expression, Oming looked at her coldly, but suddenly he seemed to think of something and said, Oh, by the way, it was not my idea to run away from the marriage. You don't know that, do you? When Shun Manting heard this, her eyes narrowed, and she looked up at him. I made a deal with Shun Luo. Oming smiled, and then turned to open the door of the ward. What do you mean? Shun Manting asked, but Oming had no intention of answering and had gone out in the blink of an eye. He made a deal with Shun Luo, and did Oming run away from the marriage because of the deal he made with Shun Luo? Shun Manting's heart trembled. It was as if all the doubts and suspicions in her mind had been fused together in an instant. The truth of the matter immediately became clear. The door of the ward was gently closed, making a slight sound. Shun Manting looked in the direction of Ming's departure and understood everything in her heart. Despicable. Her anger seemed to be ignited, and in an instant, it was a raging fire, completely releasing the hatred that she had suppressed.
Ah!
Shun Manting screamed and slapped her thigh with both hands, shouting, "Beast, beast." He clearly said that before she got married, he would never interfere in her affairs, and he would never interfere in her life. Now there were only a few days before the new year, and Shin Luo, and had not done any of the things he promised. While Shun Manting was angry, she also felt a deep sense of helplessness. So, what if he didn't do it? So what if he changed his mind? Shin Manting had no way at all. She was a foster orphan, and because of the old lady of the Shin family, she became the daughter of the Shin family. The Shin family did not mind having another mouth to eat, and Shin Longwe did not mind having another daughter. However, she couldn't help but mind losing this family. After living for more than 20 years, she finally had a complete family. She cherished it more than anyone else. The Shin family and Shin Luo, and were bound together for good or ill. If Shin Luo and hadn't gone overboard, she wouldn't have come up with this idea to warn Shin Luo and not to act rashly. However, this was just a delaying tactic. If Ming insisted on not marrying her, based on the current reputation of the Shin family and the current rumors, they would definitely not be able to count on a family of equal social status. But with the Shin family's reputation, they definitely couldn't find someone with an ordinary status. The door to the ward was gently pushed open. Shin Manting looked up and saw someone she hadn't expected at all. Yi Yuyu saw the tears on Shin Manting's face. She turned around and closed the door. After locking it, she walked over to Shin Manting's bed and sat down. Chapter 1057. Yi Yu came in and looked at Shin Manting. She pulled a stool and sat on the edge of her bed. Shin Manting felt even more guilty when she saw Yi Yuyu's attitude.
Aunt.
Yi Yuyu's expression looked very calm. She still had a soft face, and she seemed to be at peace with the world. Yi Yuyu was a very good person and a very good woman. She was tough and patient. For a long time, no matter how Yi Yuyu was bullied and ridiculed by the old lady of the Shin family, she never retorted or became impatient. There was only one reason, and that was Shin Luo, and Shin Manting saw her insistence on Shin Luo, and if Yi Yuyu knew that Shin Luo and I had done that kind of thing, would she still continue to stay in the Shin family? If it was because of me that Yi Yuyu and Shin Luo and divorced, Yi Yuyu would be very sad, wouldn't she? Thinking of this, Shin Manting was a little restless. "Are you feeling better?" Yi Yuyu reached out and touched her forehead, saying, "Brother Luo and has been by your side these days. Now that you have woken up, he finally went back. If he didn't go back, I think he would become an immortal." Shin Manting's heart was even more shocked, and her eyes became evasive. What does Yi Yuyu mean by that? Could it be that she sensed something? "Sister-in-law, aunt." Yi Yuyu interrupted Shin Manting and shouted, "I ordered takeout for you, Brother Luo, and said that you like to eat the food of GB restaurant, so I ordered a few of their signature dishes. You should like it," Yi Yuyu said with a smile, but Shin Manting felt that Yi Yuyu's words were meaningful. "Sister-in-law, thank you." Shin Manting lowered her head slightly, but couldn't help looking up at her, trying to find something wrong with her face. "You have been working hard these days. You have to take care of me while working." "Aunt, it's okay." Yi Yuyu looked at her with a smile. "But you have a really good relationship with Brother Luo, and I really envy you. Fortunately, I know that you are brother and sister. Otherwise, I will definitely be very jealous of you. Brother Luo and has never been so good to me." Shin Manting's heart sank. There was too much information hidden in Yi Yuyu's words. Was she warning him? Or could it be that Yi Yuyu was simply narrating the story? Shin Manting wasn't sure. She smiled sheepishly and said, "Sister-in-law, maybe it's because you and Big Brother have just gotten married, so your feelings for each other aren't very deep. Perhaps, although. Yu laughed bitterly. I've known him since I was a teenager, and I've been married for half a year. You've only been back for 7 or 8 years. Is this the difference between us living under the same roof? Sister-in-law. Okay, you rest. I still have to work. I have to shoot a variety show tonight. I'll come to see you after work. All right. Yu stood up, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked out. Yu had just stepped out of the hospital when she saw Shen Luo, and returning from afar. He was still wearing the same clothes, and his face didn't look any different from usual. It was as gentle as jade, just like the big brother who often solved math problems for her. However, at this moment, he returned to Shen Manting's ward. Even if they were siblings, shouldn't a married brother and an unmarried sister maintain some distance? Chapter 1058. In the ward, Shen Manting's airs finally quieted down. She picked up her mobile phone and casually scrolled through it. She found that her incident had caused a sensation all over the country. As she scrolled, she seemed to see a shadow in front of her. Shen Manting looked up and saw Shen Luo, and who she didn't know when he had arrived. Shen Manting was caught off guard and was shocked. She shrank back a little. Shen Luo and didn't avoid her at all. Instead, he took a step forward and looked at Shen Manting with a sneer. Do you think you are very smart? Shen Manting shrank back. Seeing his expression, she subconsciously thought of the time when he locked her in the room and did that to her a few days ago. Her heartbeat quickened. She looked at him with some fear and shouted, "What do you want to do?" Such a shout made Shen Luo laugh. He stepped forward and said, "You're warning me? Or threaten me? Do you think it will work?"
No.
And it may even irritate Shen Luo. Shen Manting looked at him with her eyes full of hatred and uncontrollable fear. Faced with such a dangerous and tough attitude, Shen Manting unconsciously shrank to the corner of the bed. Looking back, she found that there was no retreat. Shen Manting looked up and gritted her teeth. She whispered, "Bastard, I am your sister." Shen Luo chuckled. "Sister? Do you still think of me as a big brother? Have you ever seen a big brother who would have that kind of interest in a sister? Huh?" Although it wasn't the first time Lily had learned of the abnormal feelings between them, when she heard those words, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. Brother and sister. This kind of taboo relationship, even if they were not related by blood, was still difficult to accept. How perverted. However, would there be any crucial information in their conversation? The whole world said that Shen Manting committed suicide because Oming ran away from the wedding. But according to Lily's impression of Shen Manting, this possibility was very small. Lily frowned, opened the recording software, and pressed the start button. Shen Manting's voice could be heard from the other end of the phone. She yelled, "That's because you're a pervert."
No, no, no.
Shen Luo took a step closer as he spoke. Shen Manting's face tensed up when she saw this. Shen Luo continued, "You just haven't experienced the fun of it. It's like a cat catching a mouse. The mouse is afraid of death, so it's afraid of being caught by the cat. But when the cat doesn't want to catch the mouse anymore, you, the mouse, will definitely be disappointed." How could he bear to let her be disappointed? There was obvious disgust in Shen Manting's eyes. With a disgusted expression, she said, "Don't take your own ideas and put them in someone else's shoes. When a cat chases a mouse, it only kills and eats it. I'd rather you kill me. TSK, why are you pretending to be a chaste woman? In reality, isn't it just to escape from me? Anyone can do it?" Shen Luo took a step closer and said slowly, "I'm not as good as Oming. That person is still unwilling to touch you, and in the end, it was me who took advantage of him. Your first time is still mine." Chapter 1059. The sound came out clearly. Yu leaned against the wall and listened to the sound inside. She covered her mouth in disbelief. She knew that Shen Luo's feelings for Shen Manting were unusual, but she never thought that they were in such a relationship. Shen Luo likes Shen Manting? Your first time is still mine. What does that mean? Did Shin Manting and Shin Luo already know? It's impossible. Shin Luo is not that kind of person. How could he do that kind of thing? They have been married for more than half a year, and Shin Luo has never touched me. How could he touch another woman? No way, no way. Yi Yu's heart was beating fast, but at the same time, her mind was in a mess. She pricked up her ears and listened to the sound inside. Her back was tightly pressed against the wall, and she did not dare to move. Shin Luo heard Shin Manting's roar and gently laughed. He said meaningfully, "I'm here. You don't have to be so loud." Shin Manting's breathing became more rapid. She looked at Shin Luo, and in front of her as if she was looking at a madman. "I want to sue you. You didn't take any safety measures that day. It's only been 2 days." Shin Luo laughed and approached her slightly. He whispered, "Why bother? If you want it, I can give it to you at any time." As he spoke, he reached out to touch the button of his shirt. Shin Manting was even more shocked. She desperately shrank back and shouted, "You pervert, beast, you will be punished by heaven. You will be punished by heaven." Shin Manting's eyes were red. She stared at Shin Luo and shouted angrily, "If I let Grandma know, do you think Grandma will let you go?" "Let Grandma know?
What are you going to tell Grandma?"
That I, Shin Luo, raped you?" Shin Luo's voice was as gentle as jade. His voice was pleasant to the ear, but it was filled with extreme cruelty. He stared at Shin Manting and said sarcastically, "What if I explained to Grandma that you were the one who seduced me?" When Yi Yu heard this, her legs went soft, and she collapsed. Raped me? It turned out that Shin Luo raped Shin Manting?
But why?
Wasn't she his sister? Yi Yu recalled how attentive Shin Luo had been to Shin Manting over the past few days. Shin Luo had never been so attentive even when he was with his parents. It turned out that it was because Shin Luo liked Shin Manting. It wasn't because of sibling love. The moment Yi Yu fell, her cell phone rang at the same time. The classic, cheerful ringtone was very iconic. Yi Yu turned pale with fright. She quickly turned off the sound on her phone, got up from the ground and ran. In the ward, both Shin Luo and Shin Manting were shocked at the same time. Shin Luo turned his head abruptly, and a sharp light flashed across his gentle eyes. He strode out and pushed the door open. At a glance, he saw Yi Yu's retreating back. When Shin Luo saw her, he had a bad feeling and shouted, "Yi Yu, stop." When Yi Yu heard the shout, her footsteps quickened. Tears, like a faucet, flowed down endlessly. So disgusting. Chapter 1060. Yi Yu clearly heard the footsteps of Shin Luo running up from behind, very fast and very urgent. However, Yi Yu didn't want to stop at this moment. She didn't want to be seen by him, and she didn't want to be caught by him. Why, this Shin Luo was completely different from the Shin Luo in her memory. As she ran all the way, scenes flashed in Yi Yu's mind. Shin Luo smiled, gentle, and the words he said at the beginning. "If I am not married when I am 28 years old, I will marry you." Shin Luo's warm and low voice seemed to be ringing in her ears. When Shin Luo said these words with a smile, his eyes were full of tenderness for her. It was a promise. It was a promise. But why? Now everything is different. She finally married him as she wished, but her heart was getting more and more empty and more anxious. All the time, she had been wondering if she didn't do a good job and what did not satisfy him enough. All the time, Yi Yu had been reflecting on herself and also wondered if Shin Luo didn't love her. However, Yi Yu would never think that Shin Luo had fallen in love with another person, and this person was so close to them. So disgusting. Yi Yu ran all the way, and she didn't hide her crying. Many people looked over, and Shin Luo caught up from behind, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. It was a long black Bentley with a somewhat retro style. It looked grand, unique, and eye-catching. The most eye-catching was the license plate number, Kong A88888. It was very eye-catching, and almost everyone's eyes were on it as soon as it stopped at the entrance of the hospital. Yi Yu also saw this car, and at a glance, she recognized whose car it was. Yi Yu quickly ran forward and knocked on the driver's seat window. Soon, the window was rolled down. A wheat-skinned face turned over. He was angular, red lips, and white teeth. He wore a big black sunglasses on his face and wore a military green coat. Seeing Yi Yu's tears, Li Jinan took off the sunglasses. He frowned, and there was obvious displeasure in his phoenix eyes. He looked at Yi Yu and asked, "What's wrong?" Yi Yu sniffed, shook her head, and said, "GM Li, can you give me a ride?" As she spoke, she looked behind her. Shin Luo, and had almost caught up to her. She didn't know how to face him. Before she heard those things, she was his wife. However, after hearing the conversation between him and Shin Manting, Yi Yu only had one thought in her mind: disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. Li Jinan followed her line of sight and saw Shin Luo and running over. Did they quarrel? Li Jinan raised an eyebrow and said, "Get in the car." "Thank you." Yi Yu quickly ran to the front passenger seat and opened the door. Seeing this scene, Shin Luo was furious and roared, "Yi Yu, you dare to go up and try." When Yi Yu heard that, her body stiffened. She turned to look at Shin Luo, and a strange feeling washed over her like a surging tide. Without hesitation, she got into the car. As she slammed the door shut, he started the engine. Yi Yu was caught off guard. Her body swayed, and she cried out in surprise. Chapter 1061. Those 3 words were clearly ringing in her ears, but when they entered Yi Yu's ears, they seemed to have come from a very, very distant place. They were ethereal and unreal, and Yi Yu's mind went blank. Perhaps it was because of this voice, or because of Li Jinan's completely strange embrace. Yi Yu completely forgot how to react for a moment. Li Jinan clearly noticed Yi Yu's stiffness. He held the steering wheel with one hand, looked ahead, and turned to look at Yi Yu beside him. There was a very strange feeling in his heart, but soon, he gently pushed her away and said, "Seatbelt." After being pushed away, Yi Yu didn't know when the tears that were still flowing from her eyes had stopped. His face suddenly became boiling hot. Yi Yu didn't have to look to know that her face must be frighteningly red. Yi Yu didn't even dare to raise her head. She pulled the seatbelt next to her, fastened it, and sat in the car obediently. Li Jinan glanced through the rearview mirror and saw that Shin Luo and couldn't catch up at all, so he slowed down the car. Looking at Yi Yu, Li Jinan took a few tissues and handed them to her. He asked, "Did you quarrel?" Yi Yu lowered her head and took it. She shook her head gently and said, "No, I can't quarrel with him." "So now you are running away from home?" Li Jinan's voice was somewhat ambiguous. Yi Yu didn't know if it was an illusion, but Li Jinan's voice seemed to be a little happy. He said, "If I remember correctly, that person should be your husband, right?"
Yes.
"Why did you quarrel?" Yi Yu didn't answer, but looked up at Li Jinan through the rearview mirror. Her eyes were full of curiosity and doubt. Li Jinan's phoenix eyes looked calm, as if what he just asked was just a casual question. However, Yi Yu didn't want to answer, so she lowered her head and didn't speak. For a time, the air was filled with indescribable silence and strangeness. Li Jinan simply changed the topic and asked, "Where to?" "I'll take you there. You can drop me off on the side of the road." "Thank you, President Li." Yi Yu tilted her head and looked out the window. "I still have a lot of things to settle and work to do. I won't trouble you." His voice was distant and polite to the point that it chilled one's heart. Li Jinan looked down at his wristwatch and said, "It's time for dinner." "You haven't had dinner yet, right? Why don't we eat together?" "GM Li, I still have work to do. I'm a little busy, so I won't be joining you for lunch today. Why don't we eat another day?" Yi Yu wasn't in the mood. Furthermore, the relationship between her and Li Jinan was awkward. What happened that night, although no one mentioned it first, was the first thing that happened. However, the loss of her first time that day was like a thorn in her heart, making her feel very uncomfortable. When Li Jinan heard that, he asked casually, "What job?" Kingstown TV's variety show is about to start. This show's ratings are pretty good. It wasn't easy for me to get it. I can't be late. Oh, I see. Lee Jean-nan raised his eyebrows slightly. It was recorded at this time. As he spoke, he turned the car around and headed in the opposite direction. Yi Yu was stunned. Only then did she realize that the meal was just a pretense. He was trying to find out where she worked. Chapter 1062. Yi Yu turned her head and looked at Lee Jean-nan strangely. Then she didn't speak again. It was rush hour. She might not be able to get a taxi if she went out. She looked at the time. It would probably take a while to get there from here. Forget it, forget it. Yi Yu kept turning her head to look out of the window and didn't dare to look back. Seeing that the surrounding buildings were getting more and more familiar, Yi Yu turned her head and said when she saw the TV station, "President Lee, thank you. We are here. You can drop me off here." Okay. Lee Jean-nan responded, but he didn't stop the car. Instead, he drove to the gate of the TV station. Yi Yu was shocked and immediately knew what he wanted to do. She shouted, "GM Lee, you can just drop me here. If you stop at the entrance of the television station, there will definitely be some gossip." Lee Yu was shocked. "Do you know how stars become famous?" Lee Jean-nan didn't care. He glanced at her and chuckled. Yi Yu was even more shocked. Does Lee Jean-nan want to use this to create hype? Of course. Some hype is one of the important factors for stars to become famous. But with Lee Jean-nan? Absolutely not. Yi Yu's heart was beating very fast. She shouted, "President Lee, I am married. If my husband's family sees any bad news about me, I am afraid." But before she finished speaking, the speed of the Bentley slowly slowed down. Lee Jean-nan stopped the car and said, "Go." It was not far from the TV station, but it was also a blind spot from the gate. Yi Yu's words were all choked in her throat. The air was filled with unspeakable awkwardness. It turned out that I was being unrequited? Yi Yu blushed, but then she didn't want to stay for long. After unbuckling the seatbelt, she grabbed her bag and ran away. Lee Jean-nan watched her flee in a flustered manner, and the corners of his lips curled up subconsciously. He started the car and turned around to go back. Yi Yu looked at the eye-catching Bentley. All the heat on her face didn't ease, but intensified. Damn it. If this happened a few more times, I'm afraid I won't be able to live. Yi Yu wasn't a superstar. She wasn't even a B-list or B-list celebrity. As soon as she walked in, the makeup artist, who had already made an appointment with her, snapped when she saw her and shouted, "What the hell are you doing? If it weren't for Mira, I wouldn't be helping a small celebrity like you with makeup. Just when you were thinking how great you were, do you know what time it is? You're a whole 5 minutes late." Hearing that, Yi Yu's face turned redder. In the face of such an angry scolding, she wanted to refute, but she quickly lowered her head and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, Ms. Ada. I'm late. There won't be a next time." Ada's anger subsided when she saw Yi Yu's attitude. She warned, "Be more careful next time. Go wash your face."
Yes.
Yi Yu lowered her head and went inside. After washing her face, she came out again. Although they were a few minutes late, the recording was still considered a success. After all, she wasn't an important guest, so even if she was late, no one would notice. In such a program, all Yi Yu did was show her face and make her presence known. Chapter 1063. Shen Luo and had called her many times. When she was about to call him back, she heard someone shouting, "Wow, that's so shocking. The woman who committed suicide yesterday is having sex with her brother." Shen Luo said, "Wow, that's amazing. The woman who committed suicide yesterday is having sex with her brother." Hearing this, Yi Yu was shocked. Xiao Chen's originally calm heart was like a small lake that was surging uncontrollably when he heard these words. It was as if the calm lake at the bottom of his heart had surged with great waves. She turned her head suddenly and asked, "Who is the woman you are talking about?" Yi Yu's reaction was very big. Seeing her reaction, The two backstage staff looked at each other and said, "Who else can it be? Isn't it the Enchanting who committed suicide these days? Oh my god, it's an amazing reversal. Didn't they say that she committed suicide because Oming ran away from the marriage? Now such a thing happened. It's a slap in the face." Such words made Yi Yu's heart beat faster, and she asked, "How do you know?" "What the hell? I'm afraid the whole country knows it now." Suddenly, it was exposed anonymously on Weibo, and it's a recording. Recording? Yi Yu lowered her head and unlocked the phone. Sure enough, when she opened it, she saw the crazy news on Weibo. After she opened it, it was all about Enchanting, Luo, and Oming. Slap in the face? Mysterious man reveals the truth about Shen's daughter's suicide. Amazing reversal. The woman who committed suicide in love had sex with her married brother. The evidence is conclusive. The recording of Shen brother and sister having sex is exposed on the internet. The brother raped the sister? When Yi Yu saw the series of messages, she felt as if she were in a dream. She had just heard such news in the afternoon, and less than 3 hours later, the internet had been turned upside down. Yi Yu just opened a news, and before she read it carefully, she received a call from Luo, and seeing this call, Yi Yu had mixed feelings. After picking up the phone, before Yi Yu had time to speak, she heard Luo's angry voice coming from the other side. Yi Yu. Yi Yu was shocked by his angry roar, and only heard him continue to say, "You are very good, very good. Are you satisfied now? Now not only Enchanting, but also I will be finished." Yi Yu was stunned and asked, "Brother Luo?" And before Yi Yu could finish her sentence, Luo continued, "Come back. I want to have a good talk with you." Before Yi Yu could make a sound, he had hung up the phone. Yi Yu began to panic. His heart felt terribly empty. This matter was not simple. Luo and had never been so angry before, and it was directed at her. Could it be that Luo and thought that she was the culprit? At that thought, Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat. She quickly picked up her phone and wanted to call Luo, but the line was busy. Without further ado, she picked up her handbag and ran out. He took a taxi and headed home. Yi Yu scrolled through Weibo and saw a new Weibo post from an empty account. The title was eye-catching: "The Truth Behind the Shen Family's Precious Daughter's Suicide." It turned out that it was caused by her brother forcing himself on her. Chapter 1064. Yi Yu clicked on the recording and heard Luo's voice. The content was exactly the same as the conversation she had overheard at the door in the afternoon. There was no difference in the voice or the content. The only difference was the size and clarity. Some parts of the conversation that Yi Yu hadn't heard very clearly were played clearly in the recording. Without a doubt, it must have been recorded from a very close distance. But it wasn't her. Could it be Enchanting? But what good would it do for Enchanting to release the recording and its content at such a time? Nothing. Nothing at all. Yi Yu couldn't find a reason for Enchanting to release the recording, but if it was Yi Yu, it would make sense. A person would frame another person for no other reason than jealousy or hatred. So, Luo insisted that she was the one who played the recording, didn't he? Yi Yu's heart sank to the bottom. When Lily released the recording, she was also hesitant. If such content was released, the consequences could be big or small. But, for her, it was undoubtedly good. But, wouldn't it hurt Yi Yu? After all, Luo was her husband. Therefore, before Lily released the recording, she called Yi Qianqian to ask. After a moment of silence, Yi Qianqian said, "If it's really like what you said, there's no point in forcing Yi Yu to be with Luo." And with that, Lily knew what to do. She registered an account and located the IP address to Canada. Then she began to release the recording. Sure enough, when the recording was released, it caused a sensation on the internet. She picked up her cell phone and dialed Oming's number. Oming seemed to be busy at the moment. It rang for a long time before he picked up the phone. He sounded a little tired. "Oming, I just did something big." Lily's voice was mysterious. Oming was silent for a moment before he asked, "That recording, Did you release it?
Yes.
Lily lay on the bed with a smile on her face. In this way, Enchanting can't marry you, right? Huh. How did you get it? I installed a monitoring virus in her phone. When they were talking, I happened to hear them, so I recorded those words. When Oming heard that, he wasn't as happy as Lily had imagined. Instead, his expression became solemn. Lily didn't hear Oming speak, so she was a little confused and called out, Oming, are you listening?
Yes.
There was no joy in Oming's voice. Instead, he sighed and said, It's really you. Next time you do something like this, remember to tell me first. This time, you were too impulsive. Enchanting was right. Without Enchanting, there would still be Zhang Manting and Li Manting tomorrow. Oming's wife could be many Mantings, but she couldn't be Lily. Lily didn't understand what he meant and asked, What's wrong? Things are not as simple as you think. Stay in Paris for the time being and don't come back. I'll pick you up after I've dealt with things here. Oming's voice carried a hint of coaxing, as if he was coaxing a child. Chapter 1065. Lily's voice was like a layer of sweet and sticky honey covering Oming's heart, making him feel indescribably satisfied. Unconsciously, Oming curled his lips and responded softly. He said slowly, I miss you too. It won't be long. When I'm done here, I'll officially bring you back. At that time, he would officially give her an identity. But now was not the time. Lily understood Oming's dilemma, nodded and asked, Are you busy? Well, a little bit. Then you go ahead. I'll call you later. Okay, go to bed early. Good night. Good night. After saying goodbye, Oming felt warm in his heart. But when he turned his head, he saw Qiao Ziqing at a glance. Qiao Ziqing didn't know how long she had been standing behind him, looking at Oming with disappointment in her eyes. Oming felt bad in his heart. When he was about to speak, he heard Qiao Ziqing say, Oh, what kind of woman are you looking for? Not only is she not educated, but she also has no brains. The Shen family has been friends with our family for many years. Now the Shen family has become like this, and it can't be separated from your mistress. Oh, what do you want me to say about you? Mom, it's not what you think, in fact. I heard it all, and you still want to lie to me. Qiao Ziqing shouted and looked disappointed. She stared at her son and roared, I won't allow you to be with such a woman. Such a woman has tarnished the threshold of our family. Break up with me immediately, and don't contact her in the future. Qiao Ziqing's words were full of anger. When Oming heard that, his face, which was originally quite good, suddenly darkened. Looking at his mother's serious and angry expression, he said, Mom, Lily is not the kind of person you think she is. She is an orphan, but she is much better than Enchanting, a two-faced, selfish woman. Shut up. Qiao Ziqing was even more furious and roared, I think you are bewitched by that woman. What kind of magic potion did she give you? That kind of woman, for the sake of money, she would do anything in front of you. Do you think I don't know? Oming was also angry and said in a low voice, Mom, she's not that kind of person. If she did it for money, she wouldn't have broken up with me in the first place. If she was that kind of woman, do you think she would still be with Enchanting? Qiao Ziqing's breathing became more rapid, her chest heaving up and down as she shouted, Crazy. You're really crazy. Oming, I thought that when you grew up, your thinking would be more mature. How could you still be so naive? These are all tricks. That kind of woman is best at playing these kinds of tricks. Do you think I don't know? Do you think I haven't met her before? When your father was young, it was common for him to meet this kind of woman. If it wasn't for my high vigilance, do you think there would be a place for us in this house? Mom, she's different from the other women you've met. She's not the kind of woman you're talking about. I'm in my 30s, so I can still differentiate.
You don't have to worry about me.
I hope I can make my own decisions about my marriage. Oming's voice was tinged with anger, but his tone was extremely calm and determined. Chapter 1066. Oming turned pale with fright and rushed forward to support Qiao Ziqing. Xiao Ziqing covered her waist with one hand and held Ming tightly with the other. She shouted, Ming, listen to me. Break up with that woman, okay? I'm begging you as your mother, okay? As he spoke, he choked with sobs and cried out in pain. You're bewitched by that woman now, but in the future, you'll feel that what I did was right. That kind of woman has no redeeming qualities at all.
Don't talk.
Ming looked flustered. He quickly helped Xiao Ziqing up and said, I'll take you back to take your medicine. Don't talk and don't move. Xiao Ziqing's hands clutched Ming's sleeves tightly. Her well-maintained figure seemed a little crooked at this moment. She shouted, Promise me first that you will break up with that woman.
Don't talk.
Ming was angry with her. He simply picked her up and asked, Where did you put the medicine? I don't want to take medicine. You're my only son, and even my only son doesn't listen to me. Before she could finish her sentence, Xiao Ziqing groaned in pain and said, I might as well just die. Ming was so angry that he almost cursed. He strode into her room and gently placed her on the bed. He turned around and searched the room. He asked, Where did you put the medicine? I don't know. Xiao Ziqing was in so much pain that her body was convulsing, but her voice was still full of energy. She shouted, If you don't listen to me, I'll die in front of you. Ming pursed his lips and stopped flipping through the book. He stood up and walked out. Xiao Ziqing saw this and was even more confused. Then, tears fell down and she shouted, You damn heartless man. Do you really want your mother to die rather than break up with that woman? Why did I give birth to you? Her voice became softer and softer. Xiao Ziqing hugged her body and curled up. She softly moaned in pain and whispered, Where did Lao go? I'm going to die. Your son wants me to die. However, before Xiao Ziqing could finish her sentence, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. Ming held a white bottle of medicine in his hand. After opening the package, he fed it to Xiao Ziqing. Xiao Ziqing ate it in a daze and fell asleep on the bed. It was obviously a cold day, but Ming was so scared that he was sweating. He touched his face and checked her breathing. When he found that she was getting calmer, he breathed a sigh of relief. After letting his mother lie down and tucking her in, he straightened up and looked at Xiao Ziqing helplessly. The young ones were hard to deal with, and the old ones were also hard to deal with. Why were all the women around him so restless? Ming sighed. He turned around and went back to his room to hide the spare medicine. She actually used her illness to threaten me to break up with you, Lily. It seems that I have to speed up the implementation of my plan. Lily was always paying attention to the developments on Weibo. In just 4 hours, the first Weibo post had more than 100,000 likes and tens of thousands of comments. However, just as she was engrossed in reading the comments, the internet speed jumped and the page changed to 404. Chapter 1067. She was the one who posted it. She hadn't deleted it, so it had to be deleted by the authorities. But isn't it too late to delete the post now? Lily clicked on the top search on Weibo and looked around. Almost all of it had been deleted. Tisk, it's a blatant lie. But Lily wasn't stupid enough to log into that account at this time. That account had probably been targeted long ago. If she logged in the moment she logged in, she could be targeted by hackers. With Lily's current skills, she wasn't 100% sure that she wouldn't be tracked. She searched for the account name, and sure enough, it had been 404. But immediately, Lily felt that something was wrong. All the major marketing accounts began to publish new content about a certain celebrity taking drugs. In a flash, the celebrity's name was all over the screen. In a flash, it was pushed to the top search. The change was so fast that Lily was caught off guard. Changing the topic? Changing the target? The topic came too fast. Without a doubt, it must be Shinluo and Stewing. Lily looked around and found that the incident between Shinluo and Shinmanting had been completely replaced. Now, most people's attention had been shifted to the celebrity taking drugs. That's something. But those who should have seen it must have seen it, and those who should have heard it must have heard it all. Moreover, Lily had a backup. It would come in handy sooner or later. Yi Yu had a small apartment in Kingstown. Usually she lived alone. This time, because Shun Manting was holding her wedding in Kingstown, it was temporarily used as a temporary residence for her family. For example, Shun Luo and Shun Manting and the servant Nanny Zhang. At this time, Nanny Zhang should be taking care of Shun Manting in the hospital. So, only Shun Luoan was there. If it had been any other time, Yi Yu would have been very happy to hear the news. But today, there was an indescribable sense of heaviness. When Yi Yu returned home, it was already past 10 p.m., very late. With an uneasy heart, Yi Yu took out the key and opened the door. The living room was very dark without the light on. Yi Yu's eyes had good night vision. Even in a very dark place, she could see clearly. Just as he was about to reach for the lamp, a figure suddenly stood up from the sofa in front of him. Yi Yu was shocked and took a step back. At the same time, she pressed the button on the light and shouted, "Who is it?" The lights came on. With a glance, Yi Yu saw the figure inside. It was a man wearing a bright green sweater. His body was tall and straight, but his face was very gloomy. Shun Luo walked toward Yi Yu. Step by step, his footsteps were steady and slow. When she saw that it was Shun Luo, she didn't feel relieved. Instead, she felt an indescribable sense of heaviness and nervousness. "Luo, brother Luo," and Yi Yu shouted and looked at him. "Why don't you turn on the light?" However, Shun Luo didn't answer her. Instead, he approached her with a sullen face and said, "Hand over the recording." When Yi Yu heard that, she immediately said, "I didn't. Do you dare to say that you weren't eavesdropping on our conversation outside this afternoon?" Shun Luo sneered and approached her. "Yi Yu, do you think I'm a fool?" Chapter 1068. Yi Yu looked at Shun Luo's obviously unkind face and stepped back. However, Shun Luo's face showed obvious disbelief. He looked at Yi Yu coldly, approached her step by step, and said, "At that time, there was only me and Shun Manting. Who else but you?" When Yi Yu heard this, she felt suffocated. She looked at Shun Luo and shook her head repeatedly. "Why don't you believe me? I didn't have to do this at all, did I? We have known each other for almost 20 years. Shun Luo, am I such a person in your eyes?"
No.
However, in addition to him and Shun Manting, there was only Yi Yu. No matter what, Shun Manting couldn't joke about such a thing, so it could only be Yi Yu. How could it not be her? Shun Luo stared at Yi Yu and sneered. "I don't understand what you are thinking. Yi Yu, you have been wronged during the time you married me, haven't you?" There was sarcasm in Shun Luo's words, and a pair of serious eyes stared at Yi Yu in front of him. When Yi Yu saw Shun Luo's expression, she knew that this man was angry. Her back hit the cold wall behind her. Yi Yu looked at Shun Luo, who was walking in front of her step by step, and frowned tightly. "That's why you released this recording in an attempt to destroy me, am I right?" Shun Luo's face became more and more ugly, and his tone was also more and more determined. "You are a smart person. You know very well what the consequences will be after this recording is released. At that time, Shun Manting doesn't need you to do anything at all. Grandma will drive her out personally." "That's amazing." "It wasn't me." Yi Yu's face was pale, and she shouted, "Shun Luo, that's enough. It wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. I didn't even turn on the recording software on my mobile phone, and how could I know what you would say? If I released this recording in Shun Manting's current situation, would I still be a human? She is also my good friend and your sister. How could I do such a thing?" If Yi Yu was now on the opposing side of Shun Luo and Shun Manting, she would have released the recording knowing that it was enough to destroy Shun Luo and Shun Manting. That would have been Shun Manting's own doing. Who asked Yi Yu to be caught red-handed? That wasn't the case at all. Yi Yu had a pretty good relationship with Shun Manting. Although she had accidentally heard such a secret that day, and she had even considered divorcing Shun Manting, she had no intention of harming Shun Manting. Now that Shinluo and had interrogated her in such a manner, Yuyu's heart turned cold. She had loved this man for more than 10 years. If he had ever loved her, he would never have said such words to her. Being able to be so aggressive only proved that this man did not love her at all. When he heard Yi Yuyu's explanation, he sneered, "Are you sure? Yi Yuyu, did you think I didn't know? When your parents divorced, you fought with your sister to follow your mother. Wasn't it because your mother's mistress was rich? Fortunately, your sister gave in. Otherwise, do you think you would still be the daughter of a rich family today? Poor sister. She didn't even know that she had been sold by you." Chapter 1069. Seeing Yi Yuyu's reaction, Shinluo looked at her coldly and said, "Do you want to know how I know it?" "I didn't." Yi Yuyu shouted. "Who doesn't want to be with their mother? I wanted to be with my mother and so did my sister, but I was only 5 years old at that time. How could I know so many twists and turns? Shinluo, and don't judge others by your own standards. I'm not as disgusting as you." Shinluo sneered, "You've been disgusting for so many years. Don't you think it's too hypocritical to say this now? You know how to make yourself more beautiful and likable since you were a child. Grandma was right. A woman like you is full of bad intentions since you were a child. You are destined to have no fate with our Shin family. No wonder my grandma hates you so much." Hearing this, Yuyu's heart beat faster, and her heart was cold. She looked at Shinluo in front of her and said, "Do you want a divorce?" "Divorce?" Shinluo laughed. "I'm crazy. If I divorce at this time, I'm really finished." While speaking, he stopped. Shinluo was not as tall as Li Jinan. He was about 1.8 meters tall, which was almost the same height as Yuyu, who was wearing high heels. They looked at each other, and Shinluo continued, "Or, do you want me to lose my reputation? To get back at me?" Yuyu was shocked. Looking at him, she didn't know what to say for a moment. Is this what Shinluo thinks of me? How is it possible, Shinluo? I'll get back at anyone but you. Don't say it. Shinluo interrupted her and said, "In this case, you'd better not intervene in the next thing. If I find out, I don't know what I'll do." After that, Shinluo directly bypassed her, opened the door, and went straight out. The door was slammed shut. Yi was frozen in place and couldn't recover for a long time. In her heart, the things that she had been obsessed with seemed to collapse at this moment. Heavily, she made a clear and desperate sound. He didn't believe her, even if only a little. Is this still the old Shinluo? The boy who used to look at her with a gentle smile, the boy who once ran in the mountains with a high fever on his back, and the boy who was almost eaten by wolves in order to save her from the mountains. Where was he? There was nothing left. With the passage of time, the youth in the past had gradually disappeared without a trace. Was this man Shinluo still worthy of her persistent love? That was the first time Yu had thought about it. He was at a loss and at a loss. Her cell phone rang anxiously. Yu took it out of her bag and answered it. It was Mila. Mira was not only her good friend but also the best agent under NC Company. She picked up the phone and heard Myra's anxious voice. She shouted, "Yu, the fact that you're married has been exposed. Now everyone knows that you're Shinluo's wife. You'd better not go out for the next few days if there's nothing important. I'm afraid you'll be surrounded by the paparazzi." How could that be? Very few people know about this. I don't know. Anyway, be careful. I'll ask an assistant to help you. Got it? Thank you, Mila. Chapter 1070. Mira. Yu interrupted Myra's words and said, "If I use this to hype up, will it have any impact?" Mira was stunned. She thought it would take a lot of effort to persuade her to use this to hype up. She didn't expect Yu to ask first. After thinking for a while, Mira said, "If you decide to use this to hype up, leave it to me. If it were any other artist, I would definitely start to hype up without hesitation. But you are my friend, and I don't want you to blame me in the future. Yu, if you really want to use this to hype up, I am confident that I can make you famous. As for whether you can make it to the A-list or not, it depends on how hard you work. Like many girls, Yu had dreamed of being a big star since she was a child. Hearing Myra's words, it was impossible for Yu to say that she wasn't tempted. Everyone wanted to be successful and reach the peak of life. People who had this kind of goal were always men and women, young and old. Yu was silent for a moment and asked, "What is the risk?" Now that the crisis has been created, even if the outside world knows the fact that you have a secret marriage with the young master of the Shin family, it is not impossible to cover up this matter. But if you want to make use of this matter, you have to make it big. So, will it bring harm to the Shin family? The harm to the Shin family is not caused by you, but by themselves. What you do is just to help them. But if it succeeds, will your husband blame you? Blame? Yu twitched her lips and said, "Then let's start, Mira. I'm ready." Mira felt a little strange and reminded her, "If there's a crack in your marriage because of this, will it be okay?" "Even if I don't hype up, there will still be cracks in our marriage." Yu smiled and looked into the mirror from afar. Suddenly, she felt a little sad. "I'll leave it to you, Mira. Tell me what to do." "All right, I'll contact you again if I need your cooperation." "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Yu sat on the sofa and browsed the news. The major websites had been replaced with news of a famous male star taking drugs, but there were also netizens who questioned and posted, "Is this to save the Shin siblings? Hands up, this PR is awesome." After scrolling a bit more, she realized that there were already a lot of news about her on the trending page. Breaking news, Shin Luo's wife's identity has been revealed. She's from the entertainment industry. She's the new and powerful actress, Yu. Yu clicked on it. Was the newly minted actress referring to her? Although it wasn't positive news, he still felt a little happy when he saw these words. He clicked on it and found that the comments were mixed. Pingxing Idali. What do you mean by a new and powerful actress? Come on, any random unknown actress is a new and powerful actress. How can you call me Goddess Jean? My Goddess Jean fan Jean Fon double-clicking 666 send you to the heavens. I have an impression of this woman. She's already married? He had a child's face.
Damn.
Bayan, Shin Shuang is so shameless. I'll send you to heaven. I pity this star. It wasn't easy for her to find a rich second-generation heir. So this is how he behaves. Doghead, super cute little piggy. My sister, you're amazing. You're being treated as a mistress by your own sister-in-law. This woman must be lacking in charm. After scrolling through the list, her phone vibrated. She had received a WeChat message. Chapter 1071. When Yu saw the message, she immediately asked, "What should I send?" "Mira, it can highlight your position as the underdog and make you seem helpless, but it can't be weak. It can't make people think that you're pretending to be weak. Think about it carefully." When she saw the message, Yu thought for a moment. Then, she typed 3 words to Mira. "I believe him." When Mira saw the words, she was slightly stunned. She immediately sent a thumbs up. Sure. When Yu saw Myra's reply, she sat on the sofa and took a selfie. Then, she sent out the message she had prepared. After she sent it, no one responded for a few minutes. After all, she was a minor celebrity. It was normal for no one to notice her. Yu didn't care too much. She put her phone down and went to take a shower. After removing her makeup and applying a facial mask, she picked up her phone and realized that the message had exploded. Sister Fan is the best. F***CK. He still believes in such conclusive evidence. True love. Yunxia Ijiruhua. Girl, although I don't know you, I sympathize with you. It's better to get a divorce with such a man. Heart. Baojia's little loli. I've seen the military adventure you acted in. Although you're not very popular yet, I can tell that you're a very hardworking newcomer. Keep it up. Heart. Shuang Xinquangdia, you still believe in him? Are you retarded? Because of this message, Yu's number of fans increased from the original tens of thousands. There were a lot of messages popping up. It was the first time that Yu had experienced such an obvious change in her fans. Do you know how celebrities become famous? It's 30% ability, 30% luck, and the rest is all hype. That was what Mira had said. Make use of the hype. When Eulili arrived at the Kingstown airport, it was December 29th, the day before New Year's Eve. Eulili had wrapped herself up tightly to avoid being photographed. Her original plan of not returning to the country had been completely ruined by Oming. The first thing Eulili did when she returned to the country was to put her luggage at home before calling Oming. Recently, Oming had been extremely busy. The end of the year was approaching, and there were a lot of urgent matters to deal with in the company. There was also his mother's matter, the Shun family's matter, and the wedding. All kinds of things piled up. When he received Eulili's call, it was 2:00 in the afternoon, and he had just eaten. Oming?
Eulili asked.
Oming took a sip of the soup and replied, "Yes. I'm back home." Oming choked on his soup and coughed violently. He hurriedly pulled out a piece of tissue and wiped it. At this time? Yeah. Eulili heard his surprise and said, "I'm alone at home now." Yi Qianqian went home for the new year.
No one followed you, right?
Oming put down his chopsticks worriedly. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? I was afraid that you wouldn't let me come back. I missed you. Eulili's voice was cautious. After I got off the plane, I wrapped myself up tightly. No one would recognize me. I'll be fine. Oming's temper melted when he heard her say, "I missed you." His expression softened as he said in a low voice, "Wait for me.
I'll go look for you now."
Chapter 1072. Su Chung was sitting next to Oming eating. After watching Oming hang up the phone, he coughed and asked, "Is that Miss Yu?" "Yeah," Oming answered and stood up. After explaining the company's affairs, he stood up and said, "If anyone looks for me, tell them that I am busy and have been in the company." In this kind of situation, Oming did not dare to provoke the reporters easily. If they were groundless, who knew what they would write? Su Ching knew the danger and nodded, but he still reminded him, "Why don't you eat first?" "I'm not eating."
You eat.
Oming went into the office cloakroom and put on sunglasses. After changing into a low-key black windbreaker, he went downstairs. Driving a more common car, he stealthily drove to the neighborhood where Eulili lived. As soon as he went up, Oming rang the doorbell, and the person inside immediately opened the door. Oming was dressed very differently from his usual style, but Eulili recognized him at a glance. With a happy smile on her face, she rushed toward him. Her whole body climbed on top of him, and her legs clung to his thighs. Oming held her firmly, and the smile on his face gradually widened. After carrying her in, he closed the door and couldn't wait to kiss her face. Eulili took off his sunglasses, hugged his neck with both hands, and kissed him back. Oming sat on the sofa with her in his arms, pinched her face, and frowned. "Why have you lost weight again? Haven't you eaten these days?" "I'm not used to French food." Eulili smiled and sat on him, looking at his tired face. On his originally wheat-colored skin, there were 2 more dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that even his chin had turned green. His hair had grown long, and his cheeks were slightly sunken. Eulili felt a little distressed. She touched his face and asked, "Have you been very tired recently?" The heartache in her eyes made Oming smile. He held her face and kissed her on the lips.
"I'm not tired," he said.
"Liar. Look at your face." Eulili pinched his face and said, "You look like a person in his 30s. You look old again." Oming laughed. "I'm already in my 30s. No, you look about the same age as Shinjilia. That's because he grew too fast." Oming looked at her seriously. "That's why he looks old. I'm different. No matter what, I'm still young. Otherwise, how could I have charmed you for so many years?" Yuli snorted in disgust and looked away. "What kind of expression is that?" Oming hugged her and chuckled helplessly. "Am I wrong? You've grown thicker. It's only been a few days since we last met, and your facial defense has become so strong?" Eulili pushed him away. "I'm hungry. Have you eaten?" "I didn't eat." "That's great." Let's eat instant noodles together. There's only instant noodles here. Okay. Oming chuckled and looked at her. Everything you cook is delicious. Eulili raised her eyebrows slightly with a proud look on her face and immediately went into the kitchen. About 10 minutes later, Eulili walked out with a bowl of noodles and shouted, "Time to eat." However, what responded to her was a steady and even breathing. Asleep. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.